Chapter 288. After a night of chaos, this strange family slowly regained its peace. Mother Tiger found the cubs and immediately laid down to let them drink some milk to calm down. However, during this period of time, Mother Tiger had already implemented a plan to stop them from drinking milk. The cubs, who were almost 6 months old, were not small. It was strenuous to lick them from head to toe, so Mother Tiger rarely did this. At most, she would cut corners and lick their heads. When the 2 cubs woke up and found that they had milk to drink, their eyes lit up. Was there such a good thing? They cried out and went up to the milk. Sure enough, after drinking 2 mouthfuls of milk to calm down, everything that happened last night was forgotten. Mother Tiger was already used to Chow Chi Shi not drinking milk. Her main job now was to take care of the 2 cubs by her side. Do you want to go hunting with me? Or do you want to stay here and watch the cubs? Ao Daisai asked gently. He was not like this in the past. Perhaps it was because he was still afraid of not being able to find the little bear for a few hours. Watching the cubs drink milk was too interesting. Yilashanda almost wanted to say, "I want to watch the cubs here." Fortunately, he reacted quickly. After thinking for a while, he said tactfully, "Of course I want to follow you, but will it affect your hunting?" Ao Daisai said to the little bear, "You won't if you're obedient." After saying that, he stood up and walked leisurely outside. What do you mean? Well, have I not been obedient? Chow Chi Shi immediately exploded because he felt that Ao Daisai was biased against him. He had to chase after him and ask for justice. We've been together for so long, and I've only dropped the ball once or twice. If he had to calculate the total score, Ao Daisai had a lot of dark history. However, Chow Chi Shi did not care about it. He had only said a normal sentence, but Yilashanda had been nagging and criticizing him. Ao Daisai said in amusement, "Why are you reacting so strongly? Are you guilty?" Seeing Yilashanda's glare, he seemed to suddenly understand why he was arguing with the little bear. He quickly changed his words. "Yes, you're the most obedient." Yilashanda immediately straightened his chest. "I am. Even last night, he had done a good job. He should be awarded the Little Tiger of the Northeast." Yilashanda, of course, would not affect Ao Daisai's hunting. And actions. Ao Daisai while Yilashanda, because he was still young. A tiger's teeth would only grow to their peak when it was at least 3 years old. Besides, the wild weeds had covered him up to only his ears. If he were to hunt at this height, it would probably take a long time for the prey to find him. After participating in a boring hunting mission, Yilashanda ran behind Ao Daisai and brought the prey back for a meal. Maybe fighting together was the best way to improve the sense of teamwork. The tigress, who had not accepted Ao Daisai before, was eating with the children this time. Yilashanda and Ao Daisai looked at each other and winked at each other. It was not that he had to gain the affection of the tigress, but at least Ao Daisai did not want to be chased by the tigress every day when he took Yilashanda away. Then, even if he was with Yilashanda, he would not be at peace. When the tigress brought back the prey for the next meal, Yilashanda frantically asked Ao Daisai to come and eat together. He dared to guarantee that the tigress would not be angry. Ao Daisai, of course, knew that the tigress would not be angry. He had also contributed food for the previous meal. After hesitating for a while, he went forward to eat. The tigress glanced at him a few times and did not make any objections. The current situation was that the prey was eaten by the 5 tigers. The picture could be said to be neat, but some things were still very distinct. For example, Ao Daisai only fed Yilashanda, and the tigress only fed the 2 cubs. However, Chow Chi Shi did not mind. Sometimes he would also enthusiastically feed the cubs. After all, he was the king and had to take care of his younger brothers. After that, the pitiful tigress whose territory was taken over did not come again. Chow Chi Shi guessed that the tigress mother and Ao Daisai must have beaten the tigress very badly. Otherwise, why would they not dare to come again after only one time? Who would be willing to leave such a big territory if they had not been forced to? TSK. However, sympathy was one thing. The tigress mother and cubs also had to survive. Single men could live anywhere. The two cubs who were weaned did not stop until 6 months later. At that time, their sizes were already very impressive. The transition period when the tigress took over the new territory was also very smooth. Her neighbors were probably more willing to deal with the tigress. At least they did not have to worry about being replaced at any time. The 9-year-old male tiger that was replaced was confused. The accomplice Ao Daisai carried out his plan without any shame. He informed Yulashanda that he would be leaving in 2 days. Yulashanda blinked her big eyes and asked him, "What's wrong? Are we leaving just like that?" Ao Daisai immediately misunderstood his meaning. "What else? You want to take the cubs away?" No, Xiao Qishi did not have such thoughts. He meant that it was a little troublesome to leave without saying goodbye. The tiger's mother was raising such a handsome tiger cub. He had to give it something to comfort her. "Give what?" Ao Daisai narrowed his eyes and said, "Okay, I got it. What do you know?" Xiao Qishi was not at ease. After all, this was a wild animal that had not experienced the influence of socialism. Did he know? Robe or black deer, one or two? Ao Daisai asked directly. It turned out that he really knew. As for the number, Xiao Qishi showed him her face. "How much do you think I'm worth?" Where was the handsome tiger cub with a bright future? Ao Daisai knew clearly what the little cutie wanted to express, but he did not play by the rules. He lowered his head and picked her up. "One, no more." "You annoying." Yulashanda shouted angrily and asked this guy to put her down quickly. But who was Ao Daisai? He was very smart. He knew that if he put Yulashanda down, she would bite him. So, he coaxed her before putting her down. The other party agreed to change the target of the 2 roe deers. Xiao Qishi stopped. 2 roe deers did not look like much, but it still took a few hours. This meant that they had to hunt their 3rd prey before they could eat. When they hunted the 2nd roe deer, Yulashanda looked at the prey and swallowed. Hunger made him change his mind at any moment. Should he just give 1 roe deer to them? The weather is quite hot. Do you think the 3 of them can eat 2 roe deers? Yulashanda was inadvertently worried. They're in a hurry. Ao Daisai snickered in his heart, but he was not lying. A tiger's appetite could indeed eat 2 roe deers before the prey rotted. So powerful? All right. Ao Daisai brought back 2 prey consecutively and did not eat either of them. The tigress was probably very confused, but she would not reject the benefits that were readily available. After smelling it and finding nothing strange, he began to eat with the children. Xiao Qishi was at a loss. Maybe he could eat before leaving, but his character did not allow him to. So he obediently stayed by Ao Daisai's side. When the tigress and her children were full of food and the night was dark, they were about to leave. Thinking about it, it was quite sad. He did not know if he could still see them after today. The main reason was that he could not bear to leave the little tiger. Watching them eat, drink, play, and sleep every day had already become Yulashanda's habit. He muttered vaguely, "Are we not bringing the little tiger?" Ao Daisai was resolute. "No." Seeing Yulashanda's resentful gaze, he took a step back. "If we bring the little tiger, we won't bring you." This time, Yulashanda's gaze was not as simple as resentment. It was directly spitting fire. Ao Daisai, what was he saying? How dare he say such words? Did he want to die? That's why I will only bring you and not the little tiger. Ao Daisai rubbed his chin against Yulashanda's head, reminding him to look at the little tiger quickly. He would not be able to see it after a while. Yulashanda quickly forgot about the confrontation and hurriedly looked at the little tiger. He realized that the little tiger was eating so happily, but he was hungry. He might as well not look at it. "Let's go." Ao Daisai took one last look at the 3 women who were eating very happily. Then, he steadily led Yulashanda and left. Not letting Yulashanda eat until he was full was his little trick. If Yulashanda was full, he would not be able to lead him. Only with an empty stomach would he have the motivation to hurry on, because the prey was at the next stop. It was undeniable that Ao Daisai had a firm grasp of this. The hunger greatly overshadowed Yulashanda's sadness of parting. He only wanted to reach the next stop quickly and hunt for food. The juicy little tiger was so hungry that it was about to go crazy. Just like every time he walked at night in the past, Yelashanda, who was too lazy to look at the road, would hold the tip of his boyfriend's tail in his mouth and walk on the road that he had walked on before. It was very safe. It was not that Yelashanda was lazy. It was mainly because there were some places where the wild grass was lush and he did not have the ability to look at the road. After walking like this for half the night, under the constant urging of the little bear, Ao Daisai chose a small wild boar. He stuffed his partner's mouth and continued to look for prey to fill his stomach. Yelashanda, who had not eaten to his heart's content, held a piece of pig's head in his mouth and was unhappy at the back. Now that he was not hungry, his sadness of parting came up. Damn it! Why was Ao Daisai unwilling to take the little tiger with him? However, Yelashanda did not dare to mention this topic. He was a little worried that if he annoyed Ao Daisai, the other party would send him back in exchange for a little tiger. Although the probability of this happening was less than 0.00000000000001. In the second half of the night, after leaving the big family, Ao Daisai brought Yelashanda and hurried. Finally, they found a big prey that was enough for them to eat until they were full. Xiao Qishi realized that the sky was bright after they finished eating. He could not help but squint his eyes and sigh. It's another day of following you around day and night. Ao Daisai pulled him into his arms and lovingly washed his face and head. His gaze was so gentle that it was dripping with water. Yes, it was another day without day and night. However, tigers were originally night owls. It was normal for them to appear at night and sleep during the day. If it was not to prevent the tigers from following them, Ao Daisai could also hug Yelashanda and sleep here for the whole day. In the afternoon, Ao Daisai woke Yelashanda up and reminded him that they were about to set off. When he opened his eyes, he saw Ao Daisai trying to steal a kiss from him. Yelashanda, who was as sleepy as a dog, howled and bit his boyfriend's neck. He complained, Ao Daisai, you're so evil. Do you know that I'm still growing? I won't grow taller if I don't get enough sleep. Yelashanda did not understand. Why couldn't a wild northeastern tiger cub wake up naturally? Was this reasonable? It was just once or twice. As long as it was not frequent, it would be fine. Yelashanda's worries were completely unnecessary. Ao Daisai said with certainty, you'll grow taller. Don't worry. There was no doubt that he could grow taller by eating more meat. What could Yelashanda do? He could only accept his fate and climb up to follow his beastly boyfriend, who only knew how to reason and not be humane. Author has something to say. 3 good tigers in the Far East District. Good night, everyone. Chapter 289. The staff members who were always paying attention to the tiger family realized that something was wrong earlier than the tiger mother. There is no doubt that the strange family that usually split into 2 teams to take care of the cubs seemed to have disintegrated without any warning. The subadult male tiger that liked to take a cub out went out as usual last night, but it seemed that he didn't intend to come back. Humans guessed that it might be because they had different plans for the future. The female tiger obviously wanted to stay and live a stable life, and the subadult male tiger probably didn't want to squeeze with the female tiger. In the past period of time, the unidentified subadult male tiger had put in a lot of effort for this family. His condition for leaving might be to take away a cub that he liked. So far, people still couldn't figure out why this subadult male tiger had a special liking for one of the cubs. People even guessed that his ultimate goal in joining this family was to abduct a cub and subtly lower the female tiger's guard. The female tiger hadn't seen her 3rd child for a day and a night. She lay on the ground and bit the dead branch beside her mouth in boredom. She didn't seem sad. Maybe she already knew that this day would come sooner or later, but as long as the male tiger could take good care of the cub, it seemed acceptable. The relationship between the female tiger and the male tiger was never hostile. Due to the scarcity of wild tigers, they were almost always monogamous. If the female tiger with the cub met with an accident, the responsible male tiger father would very likely take over the burden of raising the offspring. If it wasn't for the fact that survival was difficult, the tiger mother probably wouldn't have left her home. Fortunately, Although she left her mate's place of birth, she met a friendly and steady male tiger to help her through the difficult times. On the surface, the other party took away one of her children, but in reality, as wild animals, their main goal was to survive. Therefore, regardless of whether the cub was by the female tiger's side or not, they just needed to survive. Since the female tiger didn't look for children, people assumed that she knew what was going on. The staff members who cared about their lives also heaved a sigh of relief. Ao Daisai and Yelashanda walked and stopped for days. Before the scorching summer arrived, they walked to the mountain range 100 kilometers away. This mileage is very short. When a tiger ran at full speed, it could cover 70 kilometers in an hour. However, as the king of the mountains at the top of the food chain, they rarely sped up. Even when they were chasing their prey, they were sneaky. Normally, they would stagger when they walked, as if they could fall asleep at any time. Even after walking for 100 kilometers, they were still within the range of the Changbai Mountains. Most of the existing Siberian tigers lived in this boundless coniferous forest at an altitude of 600 to 1,200 meters. The 5-month-long snow season made the Manchurian tiger's hometown always snowy white. The climate that humans feared was what the tigers wished for. In fact, they hated summer the most. Think about it. If the whole body was covered in thick hair, and the only places on the body that could dissipate heat were its claws and mouth, would it be able to survive in a summer without air conditioning? Yelashanda felt that it was impossible. His tongue had already stretched out as far as it could go, and water was dripping from it. Ao Daisai, how long do we need to find a water source? Living in the high mountains and coniferous forests, one's greatest fear was not being able to find a water source in the summer and dying of thirst. Don't be impatient, we're almost there. Ao Daisai was also very thirsty, but he was not worried about himself. After confirming that Yelashanda could still walk, he continued to focus on planning the route. With Ao Daisai's assurance, Yelashanda was relieved. He knew that Ao Daisai never lied. Sure enough, the terrain in front of them began to drop significantly. Looking down from above, a 5-meter-wide stream appeared in front of them. This was formed by the melting snow on the snowy mountains, and only a thin layer of about 10 centimeters covered the cobblestones. The two tigers were so thirsty that their throats were smoking. The smaller one stood up and hurriedly went down to drink water, while the larger one looked around to see if there were any other dangers in the surroundings. After drinking for a full 3 minutes, Yelashanda, whose mouth was surrounded by water droplets, finally raised his head. Then he walked to the middle of the riverbed downstream and lay down with a splash. It was so cool. Since you like it here, let's stay and live here. Ao Daisai did things decisively and straightforwardly. After looking around and seeing that there was nothing strange about the surroundings, he unceremoniously took over this piece of land as his own. Yelashanda did not have any objections. At least, he would be able to spend the summer here. At this moment, he thought of his compatriots who were 100 kilometers away. He wondered how the tiger mother would deal with this kind of weather. Fortunately, the 6-month-old tiger cubs were not easy to die. Perhaps 1 or 2 would be able to fight a perfect ending. For the entire day, Yelashanda stayed in the water and did not want to move. Now, he finally understood why the tigers in the zoo liked the pool so much. They even fought with other tigers to occupy the pool. It was all because the tiger fur coat on his body was too thick. The tigers in the summer could not stand it. As for Ao Daisai, he especially liked water when he was still a polar bear. Now, he was very happy to see water. However, it was too shallow. Even if he were to lie down, he would only be able to cover a small part of his body. Only by rolling around would he be able to soak his entire body. Occasionally, he would see Ao Daisai rolling around in the stream. Yelashanda was amused when he saw how energetic Ao Daisai was. Fortunately, Ao Daisai was very focused on rolling around and did not notice that he was peeping. If there were people around at this time, they would be able to see the 2 tigers lying down in the stream, moaning softly as they enjoyed the cool breeze. It was only in the evening that they got up from the riverbed and shook off the water stains on their bodies. Ao Daisai stretched his body and told his partner, whose stomach was growling, "I'm going to hunt. Do you want to follow me?" Yulashanda glanced at his partner, whose fur was still wet. He only felt that the other party's lazy look was very handsome. No, he had stayed in the water for a long time and was now weak. "Oh, I'll find a place to hide. Call me when you find prey." "How about that?" "Okay." Ao Daisai reminded him. "Don't sleep too deeply. I'll be worried if I don't find you." "Don't worry." Yulashanda kissed the other party hard. While the other party was still enjoying his kiss, he turned around and looked for a place to hide. Although it was a pity that he did not get to kiss the little bear, Ao Daisai was still very happy to embark on an unknown journey. The clever Yulashanda found a sunken cave near the stream that was suitable for a home. He immediately cleared the fallen leaves and branches in high spirits, and was happy to find that the temperature inside was lower than outside. About an hour later, Yulashanda, who was working as a housekeeper, heard Ao Daisai's call. He immediately put down his unfinished work and ran out to meet him. Ao Daisai searched for Yulashanda in the night. According to his understanding of Yulashanda, he thought that he would see a sleepy Yulashanda later. Anyway, he would never have dreamed that he would see a dusty Yulashanda. "Where are you hiding?" Ao Daisai was stunned. Looking at his posture, did he climb the chimney? Yulashanda excitedly told the other party that he had found a treasure place that was warm in winter and cool in summer. After dinner, he would go and take a look. Okay. Ao Daisai's eyes were full of gentleness. While he was working hard to find food, Yulashanda was also working hard to plan their future. Even if the little bear was dusty, Ao Daisai still wanted to kiss him. "What are you doing? You just bit a prey. Your mouth is full of blood." Chao Chi-shi unceremoniously pushed his male friend's mouth away. After finishing his work and stopping, he realized that his eyes were green. Hungry. After taking care of a roe deer, they went to the cave. Ao Daisai liked the place that Yulashanda had chosen for them and moved in that night. Yulashanda, who was full and sleepy, was too lazy to wash his face by the stream. He was not particular about the fact that he slept with his dusty face for the whole night. As many animals in the surroundings did not know about the arrival of the two tigers, they still came to the stream to drink during the day. However, it did not matter. The tigers did not intend to hunt the animals that came to drink water. This was an unspoken principle between Ao Daisai and Yulashanda. Therefore, the surroundings of the stream had always been peaceful, and there had never been any bloodshed. Everyone was a wild animal that had a hard time surviving. If they were really hungry, they could go further away to hunt instead of attacking the animals when they lowered their heads to drink water. The results did not seem to be different, but they insisted. When he noticed that animals had brought their families over to drink water, Ao Daisai would temporarily avoid them. In any case, he would not let those animals see him. Tigers were not friendly. All animals or humans should run away when they saw a tiger. It was an animal's instinct to run away when they saw a tiger, and so was humans. Every year, when autumn approached, it was the season to pick ginseng. The ginseng in the Changbai Mountains was famous throughout the country, and the price was not cheap. This had long been a popular business. Currently, many mountains in the Changbai Mountains have been contracted by merchants. Private individuals were not allowed to enter to pick ginseng. Only a few poor forests had not been contracted. However, such a large forest could not be watched all the time. Therefore, there were still people who secretly entered the mountains. While he was a half-grown boy, he knew that the mountains had been contracted by merchants, and it was not right to enter the mountains to pick ginseng. However, his mother was sick, and the family urgently needed money. At this time, not to mention taking the risk of digging for ginseng in the mountains, he was willing to exchange his life for hers. Bai wandered in the mountains for 2 days, but did not find anything. In the end, he accidentally fell while climbing a slope and fainted. In the evening, the 2 tigers that had occupied this territory came out to wander. They found Bahi before the other carnivores came. Yulashanda and Ao Daisai were surprised to see a human here. Then, based on the little boy's attire and belongings, they knew that he might be a mountain villager. What should they do? They lowered their heads and sniffed his breathing. He was still alive, but had fainted. Also, his leg was injured. Based on the appearance, they could not tell if it was broken. Yulashanda used his claws to pat the boy's face. It was a little rough, but he had to do it. He had to wake him up as soon as possible and stop the bleeding. Ao Daisai, go get some hemostatic grass, Yulashanda requested. Ao Daisai nodded and turned to leave. It was early autumn now, and the plants on the mountain were still very lush. At this time, Bahi was awakened by a small tiger with many claws. He frowned deeply and opened his eyes in pain. The loss of blood made him dizzy, but the first thing he saw was a tiger looking at him. As expected, Bahi cried out. However, he quickly calmed down because it was a small tiger. It didn't look as big as his yellow dog. Moreover, it was quite silly. He was so scared that it retreated a few steps. Xiao Qishi was frightened by him and retreated instinctively. After a moment of confrontation, Bahi, whose lips were pale, saw that the small tiger's teeth were not even sharp, so he temporarily ignored it. Obviously, the injuries on his body were the most frightening. The young boy gritted his teeth and faced all of this maturely. First, he checked his injuries, then took out the bandages that he always brought and cleaned his wounds. Many of the mountain people's things were taken from the mountain. At this time, Bahi urgently needed some hemostatic grass to bandage his wounds, but he could not even stand up, let alone walk. Just as Ba was at a loss of what to do, he saw another tiger. This time, the huge tiger made him widen his eyes in fear. Ba instinctively turned around to grab his machete. There was only one thought in his mind: the tigress is here. I'm dead meat. Bahi's knife fell an arm away, so it was not easy to get it. Moreover, Yulashanda came out to cause trouble and held the knife far away. Without the advantage of the knife, and with the injuries on his body, he felt that he was going to die. He was trembling and waiting for death, but the pain he expected did not come. That ferocious tiger actually placed a handful of hemostatic grass beside him. Little bear, treat me as your boss, and I'll take you to find ginseng. Chapter 290. For nearly half a minute, Bahi was stunned. He couldn't believe that what he was seeing was real. As a villager, the boy thought that he was dead and that what he saw was just an illusion, until the discomfort in his body pulled him back to reality. Since it still hurt, it couldn't be fake. Could it be that he was really being protected like what his seniors said? He quickly touched the tiger tooth pendant on his neck. How he hoped that it was real. Thinking about how he wanted to use it to deal with the tiger, he couldn't help but sweat. Why was this kid in a daze? At this time, he should bandage the wound as soon as possible. Yulashanda was anxious at the side, but he was afraid of scaring the boy, so he didn't dare to go forward. Fortunately, Bahi was only shocked for a moment and quickly suppressed his fear of the big tiger. He then picked up the hemostatic grass and stuffed it into his mouth and chewed on it. He then applied the green leaves on his injured leg and wrapped it tightly with a cloth. Bahi brought some dry food when he went up the mountain. He ate steam buns for the first 2 days. Now, the steam buns were all gone. There was still some fried rice in his backpack. The food wasn't important. What was important was that his water bottle was empty. Bahi frowned and closed the water bottle with a serious expression. Then, he lay on the ground and sighed. It could be because of pain or helplessness. Yulashanda didn't understand. At this time, he had already moved to Ao Daisai's side with a knife in his mouth. Doesn't this kid have a phone? Can't he call outside? He was already injured to this extent. He definitely wouldn't be able to survive. Ao Daisai obviously had a different opinion. He casually analyzed, it will take some time for someone to come in from the outside. With this kind of injury, he can just save himself. Xiao Qishi wanted to say that humans were different from us. It was better for them to have companions to save them when they were injured. But it seemed that this boy really didn't intend to ask for help. Yes, unless it was a last resort. But he didn't want to call for help. First, there were very few people he could ask for help. Second, he hadn't reached his goal yet. He was unwilling to leave just like that. 16 or 17-year-old children were very scary when they were stubborn. After all, most children at this age felt that they could save the Milky Way. Xiao Qishi couldn't just stand by and watch, so he picked up the boy's water bottle and said to Ao Daisai, "I'm going to get some water. Please stay here and watch him." Ao Daisai wanted to stop him, but he did not forget that this was Little Bear's character. He could not stop him. In the end, he could only agree. "Okay, you have to be careful." "Got it." Chao Chi-Chi disappeared into the forest with a puff of smoke in her mouth. Bahi looked up in shock and saw the back of the little tiger. "Wait, where's my water bottle?" Could it be that the little tiger went to fetch water? How could this be? However, the truth was right in front of him. Bahi looked at the big tiger who had just given him the hemostatic grass with a complicated expression. He couldn't help but whisper a thank you. Things were just as Bahi had guessed. The little tiger returned with a full bottle of water. This was unbelievable. However, Bahi didn't doubt it. He sincerely accepted the miracle that God had given him. "Thank you," Bahi stuttered as he took the water. This was his life-saving water. After drinking half a bottle of water, he felt much better. At least his head was no longer dizzy. Oh, this child even knew how to say thank you. This meant that he was not that afraid of tigers anymore. Chao Chi-Chi sized him up again. He was dressed very plainly and looked to be around 16 or 17 years old. He was quite tall and thin, but his nose bridge was very high. He was a little handsome boy from the mountains who had not yet grown up. After the other party was full, he took out the fried rice to eat. Fried rice. Chao Chi-Chi hadn't seen this for many years. She had only heard that people in the past would bring this to fill their stomachs. Eating the fried rice would fill their stomachs. However, they were injured and bleeding. How could they just eat this? Anyway, they were preparing to hunt. Chao Chi-Chi stretched out her paw and pushed the big tiger beside her. "Why don't you go hunt? I'll watch over you here." The scene was silent for a moment. Ao Daisai stared at the chopping knife. Chao Chi-Chi found it funny. "His leg is already injured. Do you think he can still hurt me?" In any case, Ao Daisai finally nodded. He was willing to leave Chao Chi-Chi here and go hunting by himself. After eating the fried rice, Bahi realized that the big tiger had left. However, the little tiger was still beside him. For some reason, he felt a little grateful. If even the little tiger left, he would be the only one left here. It would be a lie to say that he wasn't afraid. The sky was already dark. If his mother wasn't sick and needed money, Bahi might not have wanted to spend the night in the mountains alone. Fortunately, he had met 2 friendly tigers when he was injured. Bahi was very grateful. Chao Chi-Chi lay nearby and watched over the injured for a while. She realized that the other party was a taciturn young man. He didn't look like someone who would cause trouble. TSK. If he had met such a cute little tiger, he would have started flirting with it long ago. How insensible. Facing such a boring child, Yelishanda could only rest his chin on his paws and nap. While he was half asleep, Bahi recovered some strength. He slowly moved to the side of the tree trunk, sat up, and continued to treat the other small wounds on his body. When he took something out, he saw the 2 old ginseng in the bag. Bahi hesitated. His body seemed fine now, but he wasn't sure. He wasn't afraid of death. He was afraid that no one would take care of his mother if he died. After thinking about it, Bahi still didn't need it. He put the old ginseng back. After some time, a big tiger jumped out of the forest silently with a roe deer in its mouth. When Bahi saw the roe deer in the tiger's mouth, he couldn't help but swallow his saliva. He was a native of the mountains and had eaten roe deer meat a few times. Actually, no matter what kind of meat it was, it could make this young man's eyes turn green. Chao Chi-Chi's eyes also turned green. He was already hungry. "You're back." The cute little tiger that opened its mouth every day went up to Ao Daisai and rubbed against him. This was his pre-meal ritual. "You must be hungry. Hurry up and eat," Ao Daisai urged. He only fed the little tiger now. He felt that Yelishanda wasn't very enthusiastic about eating. Was it because there wasn't any atmosphere? Ao Daisai glanced at Bahi. The human saw his gaze and immediately lowered his head. He still seemed very afraid. Ao Daisai generously bit off a foreleg and threw it to the other party. The meat on this foreleg was enough for the other party to be full. Bahi swallowed his saliva and couldn't wait to eat. After all, he was hungry and didn't have any oil in his stomach these days. However, the meat still had to be cooked before it could be eaten. The roe deer's foreleg aroused Bahi's enthusiasm. While the two tigers were eating, he carefully picked up the knife and dug a fire belt on the ground, preparing to start a fire. Bahi made use of his geographical advantage and quickly dug a pit for the fire. There were also many logs around. He was very familiar with these things. Even if one of his legs was inconvenient, he could still do it easily. He had a lighter with him. However, when he was about to start the fire, Bahi hesitated. Wild animals were afraid of fire. He was afraid that starting a fire would scare the two tigers away. At this moment, Xiao Qishi was already full. He noticed that Bahi wanted to start a fire and immediately helped him carry a branch. Bahi, did this tiger know that he was going to start a fire? He felt that a tiger that could do such a thing might not be afraid of fire. After hesitating for a while, Bahi hesitated and started a fire. He looked at the two tigers' reactions. Well, they seemed to be even happier than he was and started a fire. Of course, the two tigers hadn't seen fire in the wild for a long time. Although it was a little hot, it didn't matter. They could squat further away and look at the fire seriously with their furry tiger faces. Bahi pursed his lips. He was happy. Then, he hurriedly cut a stick and skewered the meat. Thanks to his experience working in a barbecue shop, he was very professional. The meat skewers couldn't be roasted over the fire. Not only would the meat be black, but it would also have a smoky smell. It was best to roast it next to the fire. He had to flip it from time to time. Yulashanda looked at the fire with great interest. Later, he looked at the barbecue with great interest. Skyduck barbecue. To be honest, he wanted to eat it. Sensing Yulashanda's eagerness, as if he was going to pounce over and take a few bites at any time, Ao Daisai had no choice but to cover his eyes with his claws and persuade him. You'll have diarrhea if you eat it. Don't look. Alexander immediately lowered his head and said with conviction, I didn't eat it, did I? I can't even look. Not only did he look, but he also sniffed fiercely. Heavenly duck, it was the smell of barbecue. If you listen carefully, you can hear the sound of fat being roasted by fire. Sizzling oil, sizzling oil. Ah. With all these senses added together, Yulashanda was so hungry that she was about to cry. Ao Daisai thought to herself, I told you not to look at it, but you didn't believe me. However, the barbecued meat was indeed very fragrant. Ao Daisai didn't eat it, but it didn't stop him from smelling it. After a period of careful care, the first roast meat was finally cooked. Bahi couldn't wait to take it down and eat it. Although he kept sticking out his tongue because of the heat, he still wolfed it down. Yulashanda followed the other party's rhythm, opening and closing his mouth. However, when Bahi really ate it, he tasted a wonderful taste while he ate it in loneliness. Woo 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 woo. Yulashanda bit Ao Daisai's arm angrily, but her eyes were still fixed on the skewer next to Bahi's mouth. Who would be able to understand the pain of watching someone else eat? Ao Daisai felt very innocent. She didn't know why she was bitten. Yulashanda wasn't the only one who couldn't eat the barbecued meat. Bahi, who was focused on eating the meat, finally realized that the two tigers were staring at him. He wasn't stingy with the barbecued meat in his hand. After all, this meat was given to him by the big tiger. However, he knew that animals couldn't eat cooked meat. Giving it to the tiger was harming the tiger. Hence, he turned around mercilessly and ate with his back facing the tiger. Yulashanda instantly stared at him. He was too good. He didn't even let him look. What was the meaning of this? This human young man did well. Ao Daisai silently gave him marks in her heart. Otherwise, he would be in a difficult position because he couldn't reject the little bear's request. Yes, it's too much. Let's go. We won't look at him anymore. Ao Daisai agreed. Yulashanda, who was being carried away, said, Am I looking at him? I'm looking at the oily and fragrant barbecued meat. The author has something to say. Barbecued meat. Chapter 291. No matter what Yulashanda said, Ao Daisai still forced him to go back to the cave to sleep. Wait. After the excitement from the barbecue subsided, Alisanda finally remembered the important matter. If I leave him in the forest, will he be eaten by wild animals? Ao Daisai yawned and said lazily, No, This is our territory." At this moment, Yolashanda felt that Ao Daisai was so arrogant. He liked it so much Bahi, who was left behind, turned around after eating the barbecue and realized that the two tigers had left silently. He suddenly felt a sense of loss. As for being afraid, he was no longer afraid. He had even seen tigers, so other wild animals were nothing. Besides, no wild animals would dare to be impudent in the tiger's territory. Late at night, Bahi put out the fire and curled up under a tree to sleep. The temperature on the mountain at night was slightly lower. Fortunately, Bahi had a thick coat. The next morning, when Bahi woke up, he saw the two tigers again. They looked even more beautiful and strong during the day, and he was filled with awe. It was Ao Daisai. When he went out to hunt, he was asked by Qiao Qishi to come over to see if the human boy had been eaten by wild animals. Seeing that the other party had not been eaten, Ao Daisai walked past, leaving a handsome back view for Bahi. Qiao Qishi wasn't the only one who felt a sense of security when she saw Otis. Even Bahi felt the same way. He heaved a sigh of relief when Otis appeared. It felt like he was holding onto a piece of driftwood in the middle of a vast ocean. Tigers always set out before dawn. Their daily routine was obviously not friendly to Qiao Qishi. After about 8 o'clock, he poked his head out of the cave, raised his paws, and stretched. Perhaps it was because he had been a police dog, but his actions were inexplicably similar to a dog's. However, cats and dogs were closely related since ancient times. There was a reason for their habits to be the same. Qiao Qishi found a random tree beside the cave entrance. He leaned his upper body on it and scratched until his paws were comfortable before he came down. If he didn't sharpen his claws, the claw hooks would grow longer and longer, making it very uncomfortable to move. Ever since the little tiger left its mother, it had been enjoying the attention of its mother. It shook its head and yawned as it went to look for the pitiful Bahi. The young man had recovered well. He had used the morning to make himself a walking stick, and now he was able to move around. When he saw the cute and harmless little tiger again, the taciturn Bahi finally smiled. After hesitating for a while, he carefully took out his empty water bottle. F***CK. Qiao Qishi couldn't help but grit his teeth. So this guy didn't smile at him because he was cute. He had an ulterior motive. However, he was a warm-hearted citizen. Even though he was dissatisfied, he still picked up the kettle with his mouth and wagged his tail to fetch water. When the enthusiastic little tiger fetched the water back, the big tiger that went out to hunt also came back. It looked a little disheveled because its head and face were wet from the morning mist, as if it had been drenched in the rain. Qiao Qishi threw down the kettle and ran forward to help Ao Daisai lick his big face clean. Bai couldn't help but peek at the harmonious and warm scene. At the same time, he thought of himself and his mother. They also depended on each other like this. But wait, Bai suddenly realized that this big tiger didn't seem to be a female tiger. He had Dan, and it wasn't small. So was a father. That was really strange. This tiger's father was really good to the little tiger. The more the boy looked, the more envious his eyes were. That was because his father had passed away a long time ago. Otherwise, his family wouldn't be in such a difficult situation. The two tigers who were licking each other's faces intimately didn't know that many people were distorting their relationship. This is a good thing. After all, it was really hard to explain. After Ao Daisai kissed his little cutie enough, he regained the aura of a big parent. Next, he was going to distribute the food. Just like last night, Bahi got one of the front legs. As for Yolashanda, he could eat whatever he wanted to eat. In fact, he had to eat whatever he didn't want to eat. This is the best meat. You can't eat it? Then eat half of it. Qiao Qishi, Perhaps to Ao Daisai, giving the human boy one of his front legs wasn't called distributing food at all. It was just dealing with the leftovers of the food. Since Bahi had a large piece of meat to eat every meal, his body quickly improved. On the morning of the third day, he followed the little tiger to the stream to get water with his crutches and wash the dirt off his body. My name is Bahi. Probably because he was relaxed after taking a shower, the young man, who had been silent for a few days, finally opened his mouth and started to become a chatterbox. He told the two tigers everything. Xiao Qishi was very happy. He hadn't chatted with anyone for many years. Although the other party could talk, he couldn't be the one to cheer him on. However, Bahi's story wasn't easy. The other party had gone up the mountain to pick ginseng in order to sell it for money to treat his mother's illness. Moreover, he was alone and didn't have much experience before. He had to say that his courage was commendable. Even professionals wouldn't dare to be so arrogant and come in without any equipment. What if he met with danger? What if he got lost and couldn't get out? However, Xiao Qishi felt that filial piety was irreproachable. Even if it was childish and impulsive, at least he had taken action. Sigh. Bai said that he didn't think too much. He only had one thought in his mind. He felt that if he couldn't even do this, he didn't deserve to live. Xiao Qishi. What a familiar Chinibyu aura. Alright, he was just a little tiger. At this moment, he couldn't do anything other than squatting beside the other party and listening. He was referring to the guidance of his thoughts. Child, it's really dangerous to go into the mountains alone. But fortunately, you met the angel-like Yulashanda. He will help you. When Ao Daisai was free, Yulashanda told him about Bahi. I don't know if you have noticed that wild ginseng has appeared in our territory. What is wild ginseng? Ao Daisai didn't have any concept of this. Yulashanda. It's a type of plant. It has high medicinal value and can be sold for money. Before he finished speaking, Ao Daisai had already understood something. Indeed, only valuable things would attract Yulashanda's attention, such as caterpillar fungus. Xiao Qishi felt wronged. This time, he wasn't doing it for himself. Why would a wild tiger like him need money? It's Bai who needs it. His mother is waiting for his money to save her life. Let's help him, shall we? Finding wild ginseng was a piece of cake. Ao Daisai was very easy to persuade. He just needed to pay more attention when he was hunting. However, he didn't know what wild ginseng looked like. This was simple. Yulashanda immediately found a sample from Bahi's bag and took it out for Ao Daisai to smell. Needless to say, the smell of wild ginseng was very pungent. Ao Daisai turned his head away after smelling it slightly. He stuck out his tongue as if he had smelled something smelly. Yulashanda lowered his voice. Do you remember it? If you do, I'll return it. Bahi was sleeping, so he took it secretly. Oh, Ao Daisai's expression said, hurry up and take it away. I'm dying of the smell. Perhaps there was a difference between tigers, but Yulashanda felt that the smell of wild ginseng was quite good. Of course, wild ginseng was in their territory. It would be a huge project to find it with the naked eye. Look, Bai had only found 2 in 2 days. Xiao Qishi and Ao Daisai were different. They had a sensitive sense of smell and were very good at distinguishing scents. They could focus on a certain scent to track it. The scents of various plants in the forest were usually automatically blocked by these 2 tigers because there was no need to master them. Now that they focused on finding the scents, they quickly found something. Moreover, they were big and didn't want small ginseng. When they found that it wasn't up to standard, they clawed and covered it with soil again. If Bahi was there, he would probably cry in the toilet. This was already very big. Such a big ginseng on the market was up to standard. It was at least 20 years old. Little did they know that for these 2 giants, their concept of size had long been distorted. It was the same for the unit of time. Too small, too small, too small. How about this one? Ao Daisai asked after giving up 1 ginseng and finding another. Xiao Qishi glanced at it. It was as thick as an adult man's thumb and had a good shape. However, he had watched too many ancient dramas when he was young. The valuable ginseng in the dramas were as big as carrots. This one was still too small. It can be picked. It shouldn't be worth much. The 2 tigers reluctantly took the ginseng back. When Bahi was tidying up his backpack, he found the ginseng given by the tigers. He picked it up in surprise and looked at it carefully. Then his eyes turned red and tears welled up in his eyes. This ginseng was very good. Its appearance and age were much better than the ones he had picked. However, Bahi wasn't crying because of how good the ginseng was. He was thinking that the tigers had saved his family's lives. Hearing the banging sounds, Yulashanda was at a loss. He quickly thought to himself that he should find a bigger ginseng for this child tomorrow. According to the environment that ginseng liked to grow in, they felt that the neighboring territory might have more ginseng than theirs. Thus, they didn't waste any time and went to the neighboring territory to pick their ginseng. Old ginseng was actually not easy to find. There were only a few in the corners of this area, but they were all taken by Yolashanda and Ao Daisai. While he was worried about his mother, after accepting the tiger's gift, he hurriedly went down the mountain. However, he swore that after he settled his mother's matter, he would go up the mountain to repay the tiger's kindness. Yolashanda felt that there was no need. This was nothing. When Bahi decided to go down the mountain, for the sake of Bahi's safety, they even escorted him for a while. Perhaps because Chambai Mountain was too big, they did not meet any forest rangers. Otherwise, they would have given him a ride. Thus, only the three of them knew about this matter. After sending him to a slope where they could see the road, Yolashanda and Ao Daisai stopped. Their mission was completed. Bahi raised his hand and waved it for a long time, telling them to quickly return to the mountain and not go near the road. In the future, if they saw humans, they shouldn't casually go near them. He was a hunter. Regardless of whether it was a wild boar, a roe deer, or a tiger, if it was an animal, he would hunt. The two tigers looked down from above. Although they didn't say anything, when they looked at the youth in front of them, an indescribable carefree feeling flowed in their hearts. After waiting for about 20 minutes, Bahi boarded a car. He should be able to go home safely. After sending Bahi away, the two tigers' lives returned to normal. They did what they were supposed to do every day. Meanwhile, Bahi exchanged the ginseng for money and sent his mother to the hospital in time. He saw that his mother could live for a few more years. Time flew like an arrow, and the sun and moon flew like a shuttle. Or perhaps the passage of time could be described as the absence of sun and moon in the mountains. Yolashanda enjoyed Ao Daisai's meticulous care and finally grew into a handsome tiger. From then on, he walked side by side with Ao Daisai. You hunt, I hunt. After he grew up, Yolashanda said, "Can time not fly like an arrow? Can time not fly like a shuttle? Now, not only do I have to hunt, but I also have to wash the dishes, dealing with the remains of the prey." The author has something to say. After careful calculation, Little Bear still has to clean the cave. The division of housework is unreasonable. Chapter 292. It was snowing heavily again, and the sky was still gray at noon. Xiao Qixi had become even lazier since the recent snow. He did not move much except for hunting and cleaning up his residence. He was the only one in the room at this time. Ao Daisai had gone out early to patrol the territory. Unlike Xiao Qixi's laziness, Ao Daisai always felt comfortable moving for a few hours every day. Otherwise, he could not even sleep well. Just as Xiao Qixi woke up in a daze, a chill rushed in from the entrance of the cave. It was Ao Daisai's figure. His fur was still wet from the snow. "You're back." Xiao Qixi moved his ears and wanted to change his position to continue sleeping. However, when he turned around, a slightly larger figure shrouded him from behind. The weight pressed down slightly, causing the backs and abdomens of the two tigers to be intimately close. The cold wind from outside made Xiao Qixi's hair stand on end. His nerves were tense, and he suddenly felt an indescribable shiver. "Can I?" Ao Daisai asked solemnly, as if he would respect Yolashanda if he said no. Yolashanda's face was hot. He made a soft sound, and the other party immediately took action. In fact, ever since he grew up, they had been intimate. This guy would press him down every few days to have fun. Every time they had to have fun. If it was too much, Yolashanda would protest that it was inappropriate. However, Ao Daisai asked, "Are you unhappy? If you're happy, why not? We're not busy. It's normal to sleep together on a snowy day, Yolashanda." Because the other party was reasonable and gentle, Yolashanda was often persuaded in this way. Fortunately, felines were similar. They were addicted to cat food, so it was not that difficult to resist. Moreover, Ao Daisai took care of him every time he grew up. At least 1 or 2 years, at most 3 or 4 years. There were only so many opportunities to be intimate, so Yolashanda did not want to disappoint the other party. Sometimes it was tiring. Anyway, it was not as tiring as going out to hunt and clean. It was Yolashanda's turn to go out to hunt again. He looked at the falling snow outside and started to hint to the lazy big tiger to go out to hunt. However, as always, Ao Daisai insisted that Yolashanda go out by himself. He encouraged him, "The snow is not heavy. Go and come back quickly." They were in a deadlock for a moment. Daisai, the handsome youth, lowered his head and walked for a while. As he walked, he rudely pulled at the snow. Because of his bad luck, he suddenly flung his hand onto a wooden stake. It hurt so much that he cried out, "Oh, my claw!" Otis, who was following Little Bear from afar, felt his eyelids twitch. He did not seem to understand why Yolashanda wanted to hit the snow. It was very painful when he hit his paw. The young tiger immediately put his paw in the snow to cool it. Soon, the pain was gone. Next, he started to walk properly and focus on looking for prey. From afar, Yolashanda looked very big and strong in the snow. He looked very reliable when he was serious. He always knew how to make use of his strengths. Whether it was physical skills, hunting and fighting, or magical skills, acting coquettishly. As usual, Ao Daisai was relieved when he saw that Yolashanda was serious. It could be seen that every time Yolashanda went out, he would follow him. There was no exception. Silly. Xiao Qishi sniffed Ao Daisai's scent that was brought over by the wind and muttered sweetly. That guy was too careless in hiding. He knew that he was following him secretly every day. When Ao Daisai heard this sweet call, he immediately knew that Yolashanda had seen through his tracks. But he had nothing to explain. Yolashanda was very smart. Even if he did not say anything, Yolashanda would know why he was doing this. Yes, Yolashanda knew that Ao Daisai was worried that if he did nothing all day, he would be raised into a tiger that did not know how to do anything. Now that Ao Daisai was still around, he could naturally take care of him. If Ao Daisai was not around, he would be in a very dangerous situation. Yolashanda did not want Ao Daisai to worry, so he trained his paw every day. The tree in front of the door was almost broken by him. A string of animal footprints appeared on the ground. It was not covered by the new snow, which meant that animals passed by here in 1 or 2 hours. Yolashanda lowered his head and sniffed. It was a black deer. Ever since he was a lion, he could not stand the smell of black deer. Only giraffes tasted good. But in this terrible weather, if he missed this black deer, he did not know when there would be another one. Most importantly, Ao Daisai did not dislike black deer. "Boyfriend, are we eating black deer today?" Xiao Qishi spoke to the air. Ao Daisai subconsciously wanted to answer, but fortunately, he suddenly remembered that he was following him. At this time, he had to pretend that he did not hear anything. Xiao Qishi did not care and chased after the black deer. Halfway through, he almost stepped on the black deer's poop. Fortunately, he withdrew his paw in time and only touched a little bit of snow. No, he really did not touch it, right? Xiao Qishi froze in the middle of swinging his paw. Then he slowly put his paw under his nose and sniffed hard. Question mark. Ao Daisai could not guess what his little baby was doing. He only felt that this little bear was a little strange today. Then, not long after, he did the same series of actions. Because the black deer's whereabouts were too obvious, Yolashanda did not have any difficulty finding it. He hid behind a tree and squatted for a while. Then he rushed out, pounced on the black deer, and bit its neck tightly. Usually, a tiger would only attack when he was very confident. With his 250-kilogram weight and the piercing of his fangs, very few prey could escape. Yolashanda persisted for a few minutes before letting go. The blood of the prey dyed the area around his mouth red, but he never knew how scary he was in the eyes of others. He always thought that he was very cute. Ao Daisai come out. Xiao Qishi decided not to pretend anymore. He told his boyfriend, "It's too tiring to drag lunch home. Let's eat here and go back together." Ao Daisai. What else could Ao Daisai do when he met a partner who liked to act shamelessly and was smart? He could only walk out from afar and calmly walk in front of the little bear. After lunch, they did not choose to go home immediately. Because the snow had stopped and the weather was good, they decided to take a walk after lunch in their territory. The snowy season was good. If they were dirty, they could just roll in the snow. It was the same after lunch. They could walk and rub themselves in the snow to be clean. Sometimes, when Yolashanda was too lazy to walk, he would slide down the snow slope. This was his usual trick. It was especially fun when the snow was thick. After Yolashanda went down, he would shout at Ao Daisai from the bottom, Ao Daisai, slide down quickly. Ao Daisai used to play skiing in the Arctic, but times were different. At most, he could only accept sliding down on his stomach and not on his side. Moreover, this game had to be played when the snow was thick enough. Otherwise, Yolashanda would cry when he bumped into a wooden pole. Yolashanda, can't you just hope that I'll do something good? During the walk in their territory, Yolashanda and Ao Daisai could faintly smell blood and the smell of other tigers. They immediately put down their playful mentality and followed the smell to find the source. There was no doubt that there was a male tiger eating in their territory. However, Yolashanda and Ao Daisai did not show any signs of anger. Instead, they were looking forward to it. After walking for about 10 minutes, they saw a strong tiger eating wild boar on the slope. It looked to be the same age as Yolashanda. It was young and beautiful. When the male tiger noticed the arrival of the two unfamiliar tigers, he immediately raised his head and licked his blood-stained mouth. There was curiosity in his round eyes, but there was no hostility. Of course, if there was hostility, he would not wait here for the other party to catch him stealing wild boar to eat. The closer Yolashanda got, the more certain he was that he knew this tiger. Ha! Let him guess if it was Little Wong or Little Wong. He did not care anymore. He directly ran over with a howl and rolled into a ball with the other party. Through fighting, he concluded that the other party was Little Wong. That's right. This big tiger that walked into their territory to eat wild boar was Little Wong, who was in the same nest as Yolashanda. He was 3 years old this year, so he was also chased out by the mother tiger. Little Wong, who did not have a goal, wandered around the area for 2 to 3 months after separating from his mother and brother. In the end, he entered the king's territory. The familiar smell made him fearless here. After rolling around with Yolashanda twice, he continued to eat his wild boar. He was quite protective of his food and did not let Yolashanda touch it. Yolashanda, is your wild boar inlaid with gold? How much meat did this guy eat when he was young? Little Wong was chased out by the mother tiger not long ago. Deep down, he was still used to living in groups. After he met the familiar tiger, he shamelessly stayed here for a long time. But at least he did not follow the two big tigers back to be a third wheel. He only temporarily occupied a room. Oh no, it should be a backyard. It was only when spring arrived that Little Wong followed his instincts and went out to explore the territory. Xiao Qishi had thought of giving some of their territory to Little Wong, but Ao Daisai did not agree. He felt that if they could not even fight for the territory, then there was no need to reproduce. Only a strong father would have strong children. It was a sin to have children. What a strict way of thinking. Ao Daisai was indeed worthy. Xiao Qishi could only support Little Wong spiritually. Because their family lived around here, they would meet each other every few days. Little Wong and the mother tiger had met each other by chance. They even ate prey together and went back home after eating. This kind of relationship was Yolashanda's favorite. Everyone got along with each other at a distance. If the mother tiger was the first to age in the future, there was something he could help with. He probably would not be stingy with his help. Under their influence, Little Wong and Chung Wong should be able to do the same, right? Seeing that Yolashanda was wholeheartedly thinking about the other tigers, Ao Daisai was worried. Everyone had a place to settle down, including himself. In the future, there was a high chance that Little Bear would take care of him. What about Little Bear? In the midst of many considerations, they had forgotten that a young man named Ba he had appeared in their lives. So when Ba came to find them, they were very surprised. Ba fulfilled his promise many years later. After taking care of his mother's funeral, he went up the mountain without hesitation to repay his mother's kindness. In the years after that, he lived a primitive life with the tigers. It was not until the two tigers were mature that he went down the mountain to marry and have children. The author has something to say. The tiger chapter is finished. The next chapter will be about the macaw. Chapter 293. After fulfilling their wish to be tigers, Yelishanda and Aodisai did not want to be animals anymore. If there was a next life, they would like to be leopards. When they were lions, they had seen how powerful leopards were on the grassland. Even if they were alone, they could still live a carefree life. They were the best leopards in terms of lethality, and their bite force was one of the top 10 in the world. They could be said to be better than lions and tigers. However, their dreams did not come true every time. This time, when they both woke up, they saw each other as birds. "Little bear, it's me." For 2 minutes, they could not accept the fact that they were birds. They really did not want to be birds again, until Yelishanda said, "Parrot?" What did it mean? It meant that they had the ability to speak. Thinking about it, it seemed to be a good deal. Besides, parrots like them had a very long lifespan. They could live for 60 or 70 years. Aodisai was also stunned for a moment, not because he could not accept that he was a bird again, but because when he opened his eyes, he was dazzled by the colorful Yelishanda. Red, yellow, blue, black, and white were all highly saturated color blocks, just like an art student's color palette. The colorful Yelishanda was quite cute, but Aodisai was low-key and introverted and did not like to wear flowery clothes. He liked monotonous color blocks. Even if it was bright red, as long as it was a single color block, it would be fine. Similarly, Yelishanda saw Aodisai first, so he thought that he was a rare hyacinth parrot like Aodisai. Well, a purple-blue macaw, with purple-blue feathers all over his body. There was a bright yellow feather embellishment on his cheeks. With a black beak, he looked very handsome. Aodisai, we are handsome purple-blue parrots. That's great. Yelishanda flapped his wings happily. Because he was not familiar with the environment, he did not dare to say anything. Purple-blue? Aodisai tilted his head, wondering if he was colorblind. Or was it because humans were not careful enough to name parrots according to their colors? Yes, you are a purple-blue parrot. Look at yourself. As Yelishanda spoke, he also lowered his head to admire his own beauty and high spirits. However, he was dumbfounded when he looked up. The first thing he saw was the tip of his bright red tail, and then the blue wings. It wasn't a purple-blue parrot. Turning his head, Yelishanda saw bright yellow feathers on his back. He immediately knew what species he was. He was a 5-pronged parrot. If he guessed correctly, his swept-back hair was red and his cheeks were white. Aodisai, is my head red? Aodisai, who was asked the question, realized that it was a monochromatic blue parrot. It blinked when it heard the question. Yes, you're colorful. You look good. Really? After being praised by his boyfriend, Yelishanda didn't feel that the colorful parrot was too gaudy. They were put back on the shelf. Soon after, with their sensitive hearing, they heard many cars leaving. It was certain that a group of people had left, leaving only a few people behind. Perhaps there were 3, or perhaps there were only 2. Yelishanda and Aodisai came to the same conclusion. Next, they planned to use sound to attract the guards and communicate with them. "Leave it to me," Yelishanda said, swinging his body rhythmically on the shelf, and a beautiful melody came out of his mouth. Yo-yo chow. His move did not attract the guards outside, but woke up the sleeping soldier in the cell. The other party muttered, please be quiet, okay? Your roommate is sleeping." The escape plan was interrupted. Let Yelishanda see what was going on. "This is a cell, not a nightclub, okay? What's more, it's broad daylight, Mr. Parrot." The soldier felt that he could not stand it. Why did the terrorists want to lock him up with 2 parrots? Oh my God. Okay, shut up, Yelishanda said angrily. "What did you say? You told me to shut up?" The soldier had a big reaction. He was about to put his face on the railing and argue with the parrot, but suddenly his eyes widened. Damn, was it a parrot that talked to him just now? Was it an auditory hallucination? The soldier hesitated to confirm. Hey, were you talking to me just now? But even if it was, so what? He heard that parrots could imitate human language. Maybe this parrot had lived with this group of terrorists for a long time, so it became so impolite. But it had to be said that this parrot's spoken language was very pure, and the soldier was a little ashamed. Yolashanda did not want to talk to him. They were not from the same country, so there was nothing to talk about. It was more important to find their own way out. But suddenly his eyes lit up, and he discussed with Ao Daisai. Maybe they could use this soldier to let them out. Not very good. Ao Daisai had been observing the soldier. He felt that the risk was very high. He was very good at judging people. This soldier's IQ is not good. He was a bit like a husky. He was worried that he and Yolashanda could not carry him. There's no other way. Let's just try. Anyway, we are innocent little parrots. There was no need to take responsibility if they failed. It was decided. Yolashanda chirped twice like a human, snapping his fingers, attracting the soldier's attention. Then he lowered his voice and said, "Hey, friend, do you want to go out?" "Soldier, I smell a conspiracy." Chapter 294. Yolashanda and Ao Daisai. One was responsible for deceiving the soldier, and the other was responsible for keeping watch. Hearing the parrot talk to him again, the soldier's eyes were wide open. He was probably repeating the words they used to express their shock in his mind. It was not strange for a parrot to talk, but what was strange was what the parrot said. The parrot asked him if he wanted to go out. The soldier was stunned and touched his head. This must be a terrorist plot. Yes, the terrorists must have taught the parrot to say this. He saw them take the two parrots out for a walk in the morning. So he would not be fooled. He would not reveal any useful information. Yolashanda waited and waited, but the soldier did not speak. He thought his voice was too soft, so he hesitated and asked again in a louder voice. Damn, this decibel was already very loud. The bad guys at the gate would hear it. The parrot was so young. How could his ears be so bad? Could he enter the army? The parrot asked again. The soldier did not want to answer, but it was too boring here. He was going crazy from being locked up. It was not easy to find someone who could talk to him. The organization should understand him. What do you want to know? Oh no. What does your master want to know? Hey, I'm telling you, I won't tell. The soldier felt stupid. It was just a parrot, a parrot. What? Are you stupid? Which eye of yours saw that I was an enemy? Yolashanda angrily raised his paw. Open your eyes and see clearly. We are all prisoners. Prisoners, Ao Daisai echoed. The soldier was dumbfounded, holding the railing and almost losing his balance. Oh my God, he felt that he needed to re-examine the situation in front of him. Rationally, he thought that a parrot could not be so smart. This guy looked like an artificial intelligence. Yes, it could be a fake parrot. High-tech parrot. Oh my God, are you a real parrot? The soldier stared at the shelf. His expression was like a country bumpkin who had never seen the world. The two parrots tilted their heads. They were not speechless, but they thought that the soldier was actually quite smart. So they still had to prove to the other party that they were real parrots. Watch carefully. Yolashanda turned around and faced him with her buttocks. Then, she pooped a pile of piping hot poop. The soldier was very sure that this was a real one because he had already smelled the stench. Oh my God, you rude parrot. He sounded like he was about to break down. So, can we get down to business? Yolashanda looked at him sincerely. The soldier's expression was blank. Perhaps the situation in front of him was too mysterious, and he didn't know how to deal with it. Did this fellow still not believe him? Damn it. How could he be so suspicious? No wonder he was a soldier. Yolashanda used 3 seconds to come up with a story and continued babbling. We are parrots in the Amazon jungle. Bullets flew around mercilessly in the air. Yolashanda. Ah. Ao Daisai hugged Yolashanda with its wings, trying to protect her, but it was useless. If a bullet came, it would definitely kill both of them. However, The size of the parrots was smaller than a vase, so the probability of hitting them was still very small. Yolashanda was optimistic and thinking about this when a bullet flew over and smashed the stainless steel cup containing melon seeds at their feet. He and Ao Daisai both trembled and quickly hugged each other to the other end of the shelf. Maybe it was safer here. The gunfight was still going on. Yolashanda saw the soldier take the risk of sticking out his gun and shooting at the enemy. Unfortunately, he didn't hit the enemy. The two of them were disappointed. There was only one enemy left, so the soldier had to hurry up. The soldier also wanted to hurry up. After enduring the enemy's 3 gunshots, he bravely came out again to aim. The two parrots had high hopes for him. They said in their hearts, "The enemy is behind the container. Shoot." As for why they didn't dare to open their mouths to warn him, it was because they were afraid of being shot. A new round of gunfights started again. Finally, there were no more bullets. When the enemy wanted to change his gun, he was caught up by the soldier. The two of them went from a gunfight to a hand-to-hand fight. The soldier was very strong, but the enemy was not weak either. The two of them were in a situation where they were fighting each other. This time, Yolashanda watched the soldier get hit in the abdomen, and the pain made his whole back arch. He couldn't bear to cover his eyes with his wings. "It's too miserable. Hang in there, brother." The two of them fought and came to the parrot's shelf. Yolashanda's scalp was numb, and he was on high alert. "What's going on? What's going on? Don't get me involved." "Look to the left," Yolashanda suddenly shouted. The soldier and the opponent turned their heads to look. Fortunately, the soldier reacted first. He picked up a stool and slashed it at the man's head. The solid wooden stool was smashed into pieces. The man's head was bleeding. He held on for a few seconds and finally fainted unwillingly. Phew! The soldier took a deep breath and then gave Yolashanda a thumbs up. Now, he completely believed in this parrot. Not only did he believe it, but he also had goosebumps. Sweeping the goosebumps off his hands, the soldier, who was panting heavily, came over to help them unchain the parrot. Ao Daisai looked in a direction and suddenly said, "Someone is coming. We have to leave quickly." The soldier's legs went soft. Damn, there was more than one smart and talking parrot. Yolashanda's heart tightened. Listen to him. Let's leave quickly. Although he had not heard anything yet, Ao Daisai was right. The soldier asked, "Are you flying away now?" Yolashanda asked, "Where is this place? Is it far from the Amazon jungle?" "Hey, friend, what are they talking about?" The soldier quickly shared the information, but he was not surprised at all. So it was just like that. Oh, no wonder. The colorful parrot is a top student. He is indeed very smart. Then I guess the blue parrot is a military school student. God, what am I saying? I don't care. This world is crazy. Nothing can exist. It's okay. It'll be okay. At the end of his sentence, the soldier had already entered a nervous mode of talking to himself. Everyone looked at him a little worriedly. Although they did not know what the other party had encountered, it must be something big, right? No, we were just police school students and trained for half a year, Yolashanda said. The men who had been in the military looked at the two of them. Their faces were saying, "This is too much. You're bragging too much." "Yes, have you forgotten that we joined the military?" Ao Daisai reminded. "Did we?" Yolashanda could not remember. Sigh. He had received too much glory in his life. Parachuting was learned in the military, Ao Daisai said with certainty. All the people in the car. This was beyond too much to describe. They were treating them like fools. Ha ha ha, did you hear that? They said they were in the military? Ha ha ha. Are they corporals or sergeants? Sorry, if they were really in the military, you have to call me sir. Ha 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 ha. That's right, call me sir. Arlu too was a captain before he retired. Everyone was laughing. Only the soldier had been looking for someone to translate. After listening, he said weakly, although it's true that they can fly a plane and parachute, and their ability to adapt to situations is also very strong. Better than him, a soldier. The car was quiet for a moment. They looked at each other, and then the soldier told them a wonderful story. After listening to the story, the Chinese brothers in the car could not help but think that the two parrots were definitely super spies trained by some army. Which country had such strength now? Was there need to ask? Damn it, did they really meet their comrades? For a moment, everyone felt that it was impossible. It was too fantastic. Even if the motherland was strong, it was impossible to train parrots. No, I heard that parrots have a high IQ. They talked vaguely in private. 20 years ago, no one believed that the motherland's development would be so irresistible. Now, it shocked the world. As for whether it was true or not, it seemed that they could not directly reveal their identity here. There was a foreign boy in the car. Maybe the two parrots were now on a mission. They were all experienced people. They looked at each other and felt that there was a way. Suddenly, the brother in the black singlet opened his mouth and sang, "Rise up, people who don't want to be slaves, sing national song." How could Yolashanda fall behind? He beat the beat with his claws and sang, "Our flesh and blood, cast our new great wall." Ao Daisai had heard China's national song many times in the competition. He knew how to sing it, and he was very stubborn. Not only did he sing it, but he also grabbed the small 5-starred red flag. Yolashanda laughed. Ao Daisai was a fool. He only wanted the national flag if he won the championship. Since he knew how to sing the national song, he was definitely a China parrot. The warm-hearted brothers of China sent them to the city with laughter and said, "What can I do for you? Don't be shy. We are very familiar with this city." Yolashanda said that there was no need. When they arrived in the city, they could arrange to fly to Amazon. The soldier's only request was to introduce him to a hotel with a higher safety coefficient. Is this city also dangerous? A little. If you want to take a normal flight, you have to be a little more careful. The two parrots and the soldier had offended the gangsters in the neighboring city. As far as they knew, the gangsters also had power in this city. How did you offend them? Of course, this question was asked to the soldier. Who knows they are gangsters? I just became a hero as usual. The soldier said that he saw a poor person being bullied. He was so angry. Why would he see such violence on the street today? Their team had friction with the local gangsters. The other party had captured him alive. Maybe they were planning something. Fortunately, he had escaped. It's okay. The China brother patted the soldier's shoulder. How about this? I can help you contact them. If someone wants to fly over, they can bring you along. When Yolashanda heard this, he thought, great. If the China brother could contact a plane to fly over, why would they need the soldier? So he said to the soldier, in that case, you can return to the team. There's nothing for you to do here. The soldier, what? No, I promised to send you to Amazon. It's okay. This is what I should do. The soldier's stubbornness made the two parrots helpless. They couldn't say it out loud. It was too tiring for two kings to take care of bronze. The China brothers sent them to a local hotel owned by Chinese people. The environment and security of the hotel were first class in this city. But even so, there were still more than 100 shootings in this city every day. Yolashanda and Ao Daisai stayed in the hotel. Since staying in a hotel required money, the soldier booked an affordable room. He bought a set of clothes next to the hotel and walked into the room. He asked the two parrots, "Oh, I forgot to ask you. Do you want to buy a shelf for you?" Before he could finish a sentence, he saw the two parrots lying on the bed, leaning against the pillows. Next to them were open snacks, and they were watching TV. This is my bed. The soldier wanted to cry when he saw the crumbs of snacks. Stingy, can't you lie next door? Yolashanda thought. He and Ao Daisai were just two parrots. How much space could they take up? The soldier continued to run. Okay. Yolashanda reluctantly jumped up and poked Ao Daisai, who was like a domineering CEO. Let's take a shower first. The snow-white sheets were stained by them. Indeed, they were not particular enough. After the soldier got angry, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It was great that they knew to take a shower. Not only did they know to take a shower, but they also asked him to put hot water, shower gel, and make bubbles in the basin. I love to take a shower. There's so many bubbles. Ow, 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 ow. Looking at the colorful parrot dancing in the basin, the soldier shook his head. It was indeed a little girl. Not only did she have a small mouth, but she also liked to move. The other boy was much more stable. He just lay there and took a bath. From time to time, he scratched himself with his claws. He really enjoyed it, and his temper was very good. He was not angry when his girlfriend splashed water all over his head. He looked more considerate than a human boyfriend. Hey, your boyfriend is so good to you. The soldier scratched the colorful parrot's head and said to himself, but I don't like noisy girlfriends like you. You are too insensible. Yolashanda was furious. He immediately pulled his head back and pushed the soldier's hand away with his claws. Aha! First of all, do you have a girlfriend? Second, which eye of yours saw that I was a girl? Yolashanda is a guy. Ao Daisai was unhappy when he heard the soldier say that Yolashanda was noisy. But when he thought that the guy's IQ was that of a husky's, he gave up the idea of arguing with him. The soldier was shocked. He looked at the purple and blue parrot in disbelief. Was it because of the difference between the two species? This female purple and blue parrot looked bigger than the colorful parrot. Well, he was a little sorry for judging people by their appearance. In reality, there were such pairs. Sorry, I mixed up your genders, the soldier said. Unexpectedly, the two parrots rolled their eyes at the same time. We are both guys. Until the two parrots finished bathing and went out, the soldier was still standing in the bathroom, holding his head and doubting his life. The author has something to say. There is still a follow-up with the big brothers in China. After all, they still don't know that the two parrots are a colonel and a major general. Chapter 297. The soldier and the two parrots stayed in the hotel for a day and a night. The China big brother finally contacted them and said that the plane was ready. It was a delivery plane. It took off at night. There was some distance between the assembly point and the hotel. The kind China big brother drove them to pick them up. The soldier was grateful, but he didn't know how to thank them. The two parrots had enough rest during the day, so they were full of energy at night. As expected, Yolashanda chatted with everyone in the car. He talked like a crosstalk, which made everyone laugh from time to time. At the same time, they wondered whether this parrot was bragging or not. Listening along the way, they felt that it might be true that he had some ability, but it must be false that he had done so many meritorious deeds. Did this parrot know how hard it was to get first-class meritorious deeds? Damn, many of them were exchanged with lives. The day they got the meritorious deeds, they were all gone. Oh my God, haha, you are bragging. According to what you said, you got so many meritorious deeds, then your military rank is higher than Lutu's, right? That's right, the smelly macaw. 2 out of 10 words were not true. The more he said, the more ridiculous it was. I said he was not trustworthy, but you still believed him, someone said with a smile. Little things, a set of pots that just came out of the kiln. The people who had a little trust in the parrot secretly scolded themselves. Ordinary people would not easily treat a parrot as a comrade. You humph. Yolashanda was seriously telling his story, but when he was questioned, he was mad. If you don't believe me, then forget it. I won't talk to you anymore. He lost his temper and went back to Ao Daisai. He decided not to talk anymore. As a result, no one took his temper seriously. They thought he was cute. Oh, angry. Look at these people's attitude. Yolashanda was very angry. He said he would ignore them. Everyone thought that this smelly parrot had a bad temper, but it was really funny. So they began to regret. In fact, a group of men, why bother with a parrot? Just follow what he said. Who didn't have some vanity? The big brothers of China were enlightened, but it was too late now. No matter how they coaxed, the parrot did not respond. They soon arrived at the airport. This was not a civilian airport. The plane that was about to take off was still loading. Since they were here to freeload, of course, they had to go down and work together. When the people were loading the goods, Ao Daisai and Yolashanda wandered around the airport. However, they did not dare to go too far as they were afraid of encountering danger. What do you think this batch of goods is? Yolashanda was quite nervous. Could it be something bad? He saw that these people were all foreigners. He really couldn't tell what kind of business they were in. Why don't you smell it? The AO Daisai flew to a pile of unpacked goods and sniffed carefully. It's metal. Oh, Yolashanda heaved a sigh of relief. That should not be a prohibited item. They were very sensitive to prohibited items. Even though they were no longer in their positions, they still had a sense of mission. After that, they checked the other goods. They were the most relaxed people, but now they were the busiest. Suddenly, AO Daisai, who was hanging on a box of goods, ruffled its feathers. It turned to Yolashanda and said, "There's a timer sound." Yolashanda's eyes widened. He turned and flew away. "I will go and call for help. You be careful." The colorful parrot flew to the shoulder of the man in the black singlet and sounded the alarm. "There's a time bomb in the goods. Go take a look." After that, the parrot repeated in English, "There's a time bomb in the goods. Go take a look." Suddenly, everyone stopped loading the goods. 2 seconds later, everyone was running towards the same direction. But they were not going to look at the bomb. They were running for their lives. After all, there were only local workers loading the goods. Their lives were more important than their wages. Of course, the China Big Brothers and soldiers did not run away. They followed the person in charge to solve the problem. This batch of goods was packed from outside and had been checked. How could there be a time bomb in the goods? The person in charge did not believe it. "We'll let the bomb dogs check it. There's no problem." The soldier immediately said to him, "Sir, I advise you to open it. It's not troublesome." Of course, he had to open it. Even if he believed that there was no problem, he did not want to leave a knot in his heart. The person in charge confidently told the soldier about his layers of precautions. He climbed up personally and carried the box of goods down with 2 China Big Brothers. "I believe there's no problem." But when he used a knife to open the box, he was shocked to find that there was something wrong with the goods. People found a very small time bomb in the box. Everyone looked at each other. They had never seen this kind of bomb before, and it did not seem to be very lethal. Maybe it's a kind of connected bomb. One bomb is not very lethal, but if there are many of them, it's enough to crash the whole plane. AO Daisai said. That meant there might be more than one bomb in this batch of goods. The advantage of this kind of small bomb was that it could avoid all inspections. It was a new type of bomb. When people heard this, they suddenly became nervous. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and find all the bombs. But wait, even the bomb dogs could not find a new type of bomb. How are they going to find it? At the same time, everyone looked at the 2 parrots. At this time, silence spoke louder than words. The big brother in the black vest. "Please, you just said I was a liar." Yulishan was actually a bit vengeful, but she was easy to coax. "Oh, my parrot brother, let's not talk about that now. We'll talk about it when it's done. Please help us quickly." "Well, thank you," the big brother in the black vest said. The others also followed in sweet-talking the parrots. They were wrong. They should not have offended this little parrot. This noisy little parrot seemed to be a master. This scene stunned the person in charge, but he was anxious, so he also followed in sweet-talking the parrots. Yolashanda was coaxed like this. Then she waved her wings and called her boyfriend. "Let's start working." The 2 parrots finally started working, and the people at the scene heaved a sigh of relief. Next, a few people and the 2 parrots worked together to find the time bombs one by one. During this cooperation, the few Chinese men did not dare to underestimate these 2 parrots. This was because they were very agile and professional when it came to finding the time bombs, and there were signs of strict training. Their style of doing things was very familiar. Even if the King of Heaven was here today, these 2 parrots were Chinese parrots. After a night of hard work, the dangers were finally eliminated. The 2 parrots were also very tired, and the people who were helped by them were fighting to find food and drinks for them. When the big brother in the black vest was peeling nuts for the parrots, he looked around and secretly asked, "Comrade, can you tell me secretly, which unit are you from?" Otis and Alexander looked at each other as they pulled on the nuts that the other had peeled. One of them lowered his voice and said, "This is a secret. We can't tell anyone about it. Furthermore, you are not on active duty." The big brother in the black vest grinned. Yes, he had indeed overstepped, but now he knew that they were on the same side. "It's my fault, then I won't ask. But you said that your military rank is higher than mine. Is it true? Now I did not dare to joke. It was said that this kind of parrots could live for 60 or 70 years, and he was only 30 years old this year. Maybe when the parrots went on a mission, he was still a recruit. It's true. Yulashanda pointed at herself with her claws. I am a colonel. Then she pointed at Ao Daisai. He is a major general. Damn, you're a little girl. And you're already a colonel? The big brother in the black vest was very surprised. Are you judging me by my appearance? Although I am beautiful, we are both men. Yulashanda changed her claws to hold the walnut. This kind of small walnut was not what he said, and he could easily bite it open. Ao Daisai, who was focused on peeling the walnut, fed Yulashanda a piece of nut that he had peeled in his mouth. Love you. Yulashanda ate it happily. At this moment, the flight crew was ready, and they came over to call them to board the plane. The big brother in the black vest recovered from the shock and hurriedly sent them to board the plane. So both of you are young masters. Ah, I wish you all the best. Thank you. Ao Daisai and Yulashanda said in unison. You can come to the Amazon jungle to find us if you need anything. Okay. The human-shaped parrots walked them to the plane and watched as the plane took off. The plane with the lights on streaked across the night sky, and the light spots slowly disappeared. After a tiring night, the two parrots fell asleep on the same seat. The temperature on the plane was quite low, so they asked the soldier to bring them a blanket. The soldier was also cold. However, the blanket was limited, and he could only sneakily pull out a corner to rub against the parrot's blanket. After the plane landed at the airport, the soldier's team suddenly contacted him. Are you in the Amazon? There is a mission here that requires you to join temporarily. The soldier was not a peacekeeping team. He was a member of the Foreign Legion of Country X. The next mission was to join the team that was carrying out the mission here and take a boat with them to the Amazon River. The soldier agreed immediately and then brought the two parrots together. The 5-colored parrots and purple-blue parrots were very expensive, and they could only be sold for tens of thousands of dollars. Therefore, even if they reached the city near the Amazon jungle, Yulashanda and Ao Daisai did not dare to fly around, in case they were caught. Therefore, it was safer to follow the soldier. The soldier quickly gathered them with the team. It was much safer here, and people could enjoy the beer and nightlife to their heart's content. The parrots also did not need to be afraid of gangsters suddenly coming to catch them. The soldier's teammates liked the two parrots very much, and they tore bread to feed the parrots. In a lively bar, Brazilian long-legged girls were dancing passionately on the stage, and the smell of beer floated in the air. Ao Daisai took the opportunity when the soldier was not paying attention and dipped the bread into the beer mug, soaking it thoroughly. It was delicious. He liked the taste of beer. Yulashanda saw his actions, shook his head, and muttered, Don't drink so much. Although it was just beer, the parrots were small and could not be compared to polar bears. They would get drunk even if they drank a few mouthfuls. There are peanuts here. Eat a few more peanuts. Yulashanda did not drink, and he swayed to the music to his heart's content. Yo-ho, it felt so good to soak in the bar. Come dance, dance, be a happy little bird. Ao Daisai munched and ate another piece of bread soaked in beer. He heard that there was a period of time in the last century when this method of eating was very popular abroad, and it was indeed delicious. Soon, he started to hallucinate and felt that there were 7 or 8 Yulashanda in front of him. Ao Daisai blinked. Yulashanda? What's up? Yulashanda turned his head cutely and saw Ao Daisai walking toward the bottle. He hugged the bottle and called Little Bear, chirp chirp. Everyone knew that parrots were the king of jealousy. Several soldiers saw that the colorful parrot was jealous beyond recognition and immediately rushed over to push the bottle away and then leaned into the blue parrot's arms. The soldiers all laughed like pigs. Little Bear, are you drunk? I told you to eat a few more peanuts, but you didn't listen. Chapter 298. After being repeatedly rejected by the little polar bear to eat the walrus fat, Ao Daisai, seemed to finally be sure that the other party really didn't want to eat it, although he might be puzzled as to why a bear wouldn't like to eat walrus fat. In his opinion, it was the best food, but the little polar bear seemed to prefer to eat other parts. He respected the other party's idea and ate the fat himself. Xiao Qixi did lose some weight after returning to the wild, but he had the foresight to eat himself like a ball during the rescue battle. Although he had consumed some fat these days, the total amount was still considerable. He wouldn't force himself to get close to Ao Daisai's taste unless he had no other choice. Generally speaking, walrus meat didn't taste as good as seal meat. Xiao Qixi thought about it and scratched his face. He didn't know how to express it to Ao Daisai. Why don't we catch seals next time? As for sympathy, he was sorry. I'm sorry, but he's just an emotionless machine now. While Xiao Qixi was eating happily, a large seabird flew over his head and almost grabbed the food on his claws. Xiao Qixi was startled. What was that? A group of seabirds hovered in the sky, apparently attracted by the smell of blood on the shore. Most of the seabirds in this season had already laid their eggs. Like all animals, their need for food was very urgent. Even if they had to take food from the polar bear's mouth, they had to try. When Otis was eating, he would also encounter these annoying seabirds. However, at the very least, the seabirds would not dare to snatch the food from his mouth. This was because Otis was 2 to 3 meters tall when he stood up. He could easily kill the seabirds with his explosive attacks. Roar! Ao Daisai made a frightening sound to drive away the seabirds, lest they disturb the little polar bear's meal. The hungry seabirds wanted to get close, but they were afraid of the polar bear's attack, so they could only wait nearby for the opportunity to move. When the two polar bears were full, they would quickly fly down and snatch the wreckage. Ao Daisai chased the seabirds away while slowly eating the food. It was only when Xiao Qixi burped and sat on the side, panting and licking her claws, that Ao Daisai went all out and finished the rest of the walrus meat. Walruses were slightly heavier than seals. This one weighed about 250 pounds. Otis and the little polar bear ate about 80% of it. After they left, the seagulls that were eyeing the walruses swarmed down and fought over the remains of the walruses. The little polar bear had just eaten and was panting as he walked. The fierce noise behind him attracted his attention, causing him to look back as he walked. Countless seabirds were fighting over the remains of the walrus. The scene was particularly spectacular and intense. Xiao Qixi felt her head go numb for a moment. Survival in the natural world was really cruel. It was direct and bloody. As long as they didn't work hard or had bad luck, they might die before they could even have a meal. Xiao Qixi felt more and more that he was a lucky guy compared to the other wild animals that were struggling to find food every day. At least he had Ao Daisai. However, he had to grow up as soon as possible, so now he had to find oysters. What was the secret to being tall, strong, and fierce? Rice. However, Ao Daisai obviously didn't want to take him to the reefs. Now that he was full, Ao Daisai took the little polar bear and walked downstream along the coastline. The steps of the polar kings after eating were lazy and leisurely. They didn't have the vigilance and urgency of looking for food on the road, only laziness visible to the naked eye. Especially Xiao Qixi, his two round eyes were squinting into an oval shape as if they were about to become a line. It wasn't because he was sleepy, but because the sun was very comfortable and he didn't need to look at the road. As long as he left the gap and could see Ao Daisai's big, but there was no possibility of him getting lost. There were more or less some traps on the beach in May. For example, it looked like a thick layer of ice, but it could be very fragile when stepped on. Polar bears could swim, so of course, they wouldn't care if they fell into the water. They would jump down and get up again. However, Xiao Qixi was different. When he stepped on the ice and fell into the water, his first reaction was to shout for help. Ao Daisai heard the sound of ice breaking and looked back. Where was the little polar bear? The other party was gone, leaving only a hole in the ice and a splash of water. The smart polar bear immediately ran back anxiously and smashed into the water without any hesitation. He dived down and pushed Xiao Qixi up to the shore from below. Humans couldn't overcome the fear of stepping on the ice and falling into the sea. When Xiao Qishi came back to his senses, he felt that this was a younger brother. He wasn't afraid of the cold. His fur was thick, and he couldn't get into the water. He could swim and dive, and he had Ao Dai Sai. The ice hole was a younger brother of a younger brother. But then again, why did the ice that Ao Dai Sai stepped on only break when it was his turn? Ao Dai Sai wanted to harm him. No, there wasn't so much deception in the animal world. It seemed like he was purely unlucky. When they reached the shore, a breeze blew, and Xiao Qishi looked at her drenched self on the water surface. She realized that she wasn't fat. Ao Dai Sai then got up and lowered his head to sniff the seemingly frightened little polar bear who was still sitting on the ground. He gently nudged Xiao Qishi. Even though it was a gentle gesture, there was a hint of consolation in it. Xiao Qishi felt the other party's apology and worry. He instantly felt that he was a little too dark. This shouldn't be the case. Hence, he immediately stood up, shook off the seawater on his body, and helped Ao Dai Sai lick the seawater off his eyebrows. Aya, if only he could speak. He would definitely tell Ao Dai Sai that it wasn't his fault. Anyone would be negligent when taking care of a child. Although it was indeed because he broke the ice first. But I'm also responsible for not walking with my eyes, Xiao Qishi thought to himself. Ao Dai Sai probably also realized that it wasn't safe to walk on the ice on the shore, so he brought Xiao Qishi forward to a relatively solid ice surface to bask in the sun. It was still Ao Dai Sai's favorite spot. There were some icebergs as shelter. Xiao Qishi didn't like the feeling of being wet either. It was more comfortable when his fur was dry and fluffy. While Ao Dai Sai was sleeping quietly beside him, he was busy turning over all afternoon, trying to dry his fur in the 360-degree sun without any blind spots. Turning over was too tiring. When it came to the segment of drying his belly, Xiao Qishi couldn't hold it in and fell asleep. Ao Dai Sai woke up early. When he woke up, the little polar bear was sprawled beside him, with one of its legs around his neck. It was dangerous to expose one's belly. Animals in the wild rarely slept like this. Ao Dai Sai was calm and vigilant. Perhaps he felt that it was too dangerous. He used violence to help the little polar bear change its sleeping position. He thought that the other party would wake up, but it didn't. The little polar bear was still sleeping soundly. Ao Dai Sai approached Xiao Qishi's face and sniffed carefully. From his breathing, he could tell that the other party was still sleeping and would not wake up for a while. There were no unfamiliar polar bears within 30 kilometers, nor were there any land carnivores such as foxes and wolves. Ao Dai Sai temporarily left Xiao Qishi and went to other places to look for food. This process may take an hour, or 2 hours, or even longer. Whether the food can be brought back early depends on the hunter's ability and luck. Ao Dai Sai is good. As long as he is lucky enough, he can bring back food as soon as possible to share with the little polar bear. But there are always some accidents in life. About an hour after Ao Dai Sai left, the ice float Xiao Qishi was sleeping on broke off from the land and drifted to the sea. The two of them added up to about 2,000 pounds. The ice surface was not very strong. It really couldn't bear this weight. It was reasonable for it to break off. Poor Xiao Qishi woke up. His furry face was full of big and small question marks. Who am I? Where am I? Why do I feel like I am moving? Where is Ao Dai Sai? His soul asked a series of questions. He was scared and trembling. He looked back at the land. Okay, it's not too far. Sacrificing his freshly dried fur to swim back is not a problem. The problem is, where is Ao Dai Sai? Xiao Qishi felt that sooner or later he would have PTSD. Every day, he would wonder if Ao Dai Sai was going to leave him alone. Fortunately, when Xiao Qishi was about to jump into the sea, he saw Ao Dai Sai rushing back with food on the opposite shore. Oh, it turned out that he went to get food. The crisis of being abandoned was resolved. The little polar bear jumped twice on the ice floe. Fortunately, the ice floe was big enough to withstand his excitement. But Ao Dai Sai couldn't withstand it. He dropped the food and chased all the way down the shore. Xiao Qishi also saw a prominent ice floe downstream. He found a good position and jumped into the sea, hoping to swim ashore in the shortest distance. On the surface of the sea, it was impossible to calculate the distance with the naked eye. Maybe a distance that looked short to the naked eye could be farther than imagined. If a human saw this scene, they would break out in a cold sweat for the little polar bear struggling in the deep sea. Humans living on land had a natural fear of the deep sea because they couldn't conquer the deep sea, snow, hurricanes, and other natural forces. Aodicei jumped into the sea and swam toward the little polar bear. As a wild polar bear, his swimming speed was 3 times faster than Xiao Qixi. To be honest, it was really scary to struggle in the sea. But when Aodicei came to his side and accompanied him, Xiao Qixi was not afraid anymore. It wasn't that Aodicei helped him. In fact, Aodicei didn't swim with him this time. He just accompanied him and watched him not drown. The world's sober Xiao Xiaoxiong. Every sip of wine is not for nothing, ha. Chapter 299. Perhaps it was because they were in the wild, but when Xiao Qixi saw Aodicei again, he realized that the Aodicei at the rescue station was not as warm and friendly as the Aodicei in the wild. At least the Aodicei at the rescue station was never so gentle and patient with him. The sun was always shining brightly in the sky during the polar day, making it difficult to tell what time it was. And Xiao Qixi biological clock told him that it should be nighttime. In short, it was time to sleep. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so sleepy. After walking for a long time, Aodicei finally found a suitable place to sleep and stopped. Xiao Qixi, who was following behind, kept walking forward with his head buried. In the end, he bumped straight into Aodicei and fell on his butt. After that, he no longer had the strength to get up. He fell asleep on the spot. The place Aodicei found was lee of the wind. It was easy to defend and difficult to attack. It was a good place to sleep. In the past, Aodicei was the one sleeping alone in this blind spot. The life of a single bear was very comfortable. Now, there was a small polar bear that needed to be fed, and he took the initiative to pick it up. She was just a burden. Perhaps none of the animals in the entire polar region would understand what this lone polar bear was doing. Was it preparing food for the summer? Perhaps even Aodicei couldn't explain it clearly. Its ability to process information was limited. However, the way it took care of Xiao Qixi was indeed unusual. Xiao Qixi's curled-up body on the ground could still be blown by the wind. Aodicei very considerately lay on its side behind him, using its mountain-like back to block the wind from behind. Xiao Qixi could not only enjoy the warm sunlight, but also avoid being blown by the wind while sleeping. In any case, the wind on the ice was very dry and cold, and it had a lethality that could not be ignored. Of course, polar bears' thick fur was transparent, and their skin was black. They were born with a sophisticated thermal system, so they were not afraid of the cold. Instead, he was afraid of the heat. For example, in Xiao Qixi, the sun made him very hot, so he flipped over on all fours into Aodicei's arms and rested his head on Aodicei's arm. It was an atypical little bear. It liked to bask in the sun and was afraid of the heat. It was just right for it to stick to Aodicei's belly. He slept until the day was pushed forward by one day. When the other polar bears woke up, they were worried about what to do with their next meal. Xiao Qixi was amazing. When he woke up, he let out a big yawn. Still feeling very sleepy, he chose to stay in Aodicei's arms and continue to laze in bed. Because Xiao Qixi's sleep quality had been very poor recently, he had almost never slept well. Now that he had the conditions, he wanted to sleep as much as he could. However, Aodicei was the boss here. It seemed to have its own ideas, so Xiao Qixi could only get up sleepily and follow him. This direction? Xiao Qixi smelled the scent of zhonghai in the air, which meant that they were moving towards the shore. Could it be that Aodicei had taken a fancy to the little cuties on the shore? This trip to the coast should have been put on the agenda long ago, but Aodicei had delayed his plan in order to find Xiao Qixi. After eating a full meal and sleeping, Aodicei's body had obviously recovered to its peak. In the past few days, Not only did Xiao Qishi not rest well, but Ao Daisai, who had been searching for him, also did not rest well. Therefore, Ao Daisai slept very comfortably during the long sleep just now. Now that he was hungry, he took Xiao Qishi to the coast to look for food. However, this required luck, and it was obvious that his luck was not very good today. There was no food in his mouth. Ao Daisai gave up on hunting for food along the way and went straight to the shore. From afar, Xiao Qishi heard the sound of seabirds and the sound of the rising and falling tide. The ice had not completely melted in May. On the exposed volcanic rocks, a group of walruses was basking in the sun. Xiao Qishi looked at those fat guys from afar and had a bold idea in his heart. He did not know if he should express it to Ao Daisai. Well, the walruses had sharp fangs. Although he did not know if it was just for show, but forget it, Xiao Qishi thought to himself. What he did not know was that Ao Daisai had indeed taken a fancy to the walruses on the shore. However, the walruses were indeed difficult to catch, and they needed to wait for an opportunity. After stopping to observe the walruses, they slowly came downstream. There was a shallow beach full of reefs. Some seabirds stood on the reefs, and after being startled by them, they spread their wings and flew away. Xiao Qishi saw that the reefs were covered in bird droppings. That was not the point. The point was, what were they doing here? Could it be that they could not live anymore? Looking for oysters and shells? But then again, polar bears would eat these things when they were hungry. They would even use stones to break open shells. Xiao Qishi, who followed Ao Daisai into the shallow water, finally could not resist the temptation and picked up a big oyster from the water. Ao Daisai heard the movement and turned around. It saw the thing in Xiao Qishi's arms. Of course, it recognized it, but this thing tasted terrible. It tasted terrible in all aspects. It brought Xiao Qishi to the water not to look for shells, but to look for seaweed growing on the reefs. Polar bears would eat some seaweed every now and then. It was good for their bodies. When they were cubs, the mother bear would bring them to eat it. It slowly became a habit. Ao Daisai had not come for a long time because the seaweed did not taste good. However, its genetic memory told it that eating this was good for it. Just as he was thinking about how to open the oyster, the next second, the oyster in Xiao Qishi's arms was taken away by Ao Daisai and thrown lightly into the water. Then it gave him a handful of seaweed and brought it to his mouth. Xiao Qishi. Brother Bear, it's not necessary. Although we can't eat walruses, don't we still have oysters? It's not necessary to eat seaweed. The little polar bear turned its head away. It seemed that it did not like the taste of seaweed either. It was very patient with Ao Daisai and fed it 3 or 4 times. After 3 times, Xiao Qishi had to think. What was Ao Daisai's motive for forcing him to eat seaweed? It cannot be a polar bear's quirk. Then, after thinking about it seriously, he suddenly understood. In order to maintain a balanced nutrition, even polar bears knew that they had to eat seaweed regularly. However, he could not think of it at the moment. It was really embarrassing. After thinking it through, Xiao Qishi opened his mouth and accepted the seaweed from Ao Daisai. It tasted smooth and was quite crisp. If it was vinegar with some chopped chili and garlic, it should be delicious. The emerald green seaweed that he ate just now was probably a skirt, and then there was the purple seaweed. This was definitely seaweed. It tasted more delicate, but it was harder to collect. Ao Daisai was careless and liked to give him big pieces. The last time, it even pulled a big bundle of seaweed over. Xiao Qishi was shocked. No, I can't raise a child like this. Xiao Qishi quickly shook his head and refused. He was still thinking about the oysters that Ao Daisai threw away. Ao Daisai saw Xiao Qishi pick up the oysters again, but this time it did not stop him. It just looked for a suitable oyster opening tool in the water. However, he did not need its help. The bear claws on the polar bear's paws were very good tools. He just needed to find a gap and force it open. The polar bear's strength was so small that the oysters could not withstand it. When Ao Daisai found a suitable stone and stood up to smash it, it saw that Xiao Qishi had already opened it. The oysters in May were very plump, and it was also the last month suitable for eating oysters. The weather in the Arctic was very cold. In order to adapt to the climate here, oysters grew especially big. In short, the animals that grew in the Arctic seemed to be bigger. The oyster that Xiao Qixi opened was on a different level from the oysters that grew in the temperate climate. It was almost as big as his bare paw. Xiao Qixi drooled at the white and plump oyster meat. He could already imagine the taste when it entered his mouth. It would definitely be fresh and tender. However, he held back his saliva and sent the delicious food to Ao Daisai's mouth. Just like the little polar bear did not like to eat seaweed, Ao Daisai did not like to eat oysters. It only occasionally ate oysters in the summer when there was no food. Ao Daisai turned its head away and tried to refuse the little polar bear's feeding. However, it hesitated. Did it not like to eat oysters? Or did it want to let it eat first? Xiao Qixi thought about it. There were oysters all over the place. It did not matter who ate first. Then he would not be polite. Xiao Qixi stood on his two hind feet in the water. This was a unique skill of polar bears. They could walk upright and even fight. The two bare paws held the oyster and sent it to its mouth. It raised its head and ate the plump oyster meat. The taste was as sweet and delicious as Xiao Qixi imagined. It was obviously not on the same level as the farmed oysters that he had eaten before. The oysters in the Arctic were too delicious. The little polar bear smacked its lips and used its sharp claws to dig out the remaining parts of the oyster shell and eat them. Ao Daisai also ate some seaweed and then walked upstream. It stopped from time to time to look at the walruses upstream. It seemed to be planning the steps to catch the walruses. Of course, it also looked back at Xiao Qixi. Xiao Qixi was concentrating on the oysters in the reef group and did not follow to disturb it. A polar bear needed the right time and place to catch a walrus. If there was a cub causing trouble, it would definitely starve. Needless to say, Otis was very smart. He had found something fun for the little polar bear so that he could have more time to hunt. At first, Xiao Qixi picked out the oysters when he saw them. Later, he carefully compared them and picked out the bigger ones. He could enjoy these delicious snacks for an entire day. Where's Ao Daisai? Xiao Qixi found that his little friend was gone. He immediately dropped the oyster shell and ran to the shore on all fours. From a distance, it looked like a white fur ball running. Its body was bouncing up and down. Without enough fat storage, it was impossible to run this way. The author has something to say. I want to eat sea urchins. Chapter 300. Ao Daisai licked his paws and put his other arm on the back of the little polar bear. The little polar bear was sleeping with its face buried in his chest. This was the strangest thing about this little bear. It liked warmth, whether it was winter or summer. It was very strange. The current temperature was a little hot for Ao Daisai, especially around his chest and stomach. It was like hugging a small heater. However, Ao Daisai seemed to ignore the heat. He was still hugging the sleeping little bear and enjoying the rest after the long journey. About half an hour later, Xiao Qixi woke up for the second time. He opened his sleepy eyes and yawned. Then he got up and stretched. He kicked his hind legs and felt that his sore muscles had recovered. The fur on his body was also fluffy. Xiao Qixi felt that there should be the smell of the sun on his white, fluffy fur. In order to confirm this fact, Xiao Qixi very scientifically moved to Ao Daisai's side. He buried his face in the other's fur and sniffed hard. Sure enough, it was the smell of the sun. There was also the unique smell of Ao Daisai. This smell in Xiao Qixi's heart indicated a sense of security, comfort, and dependence. It smelled very good to him. Ao Daisai also stood up and stretched. They had to leave here as soon as possible. Not eating for too long would affect the state of the southward migration. It was not good to stretch the battle line too long, especially with the little bear. Seeing Ao Daisai walking towards the sea, Xiao Qixi immediately put on his small bucket. At the same time, he felt a little regretful that the fur on his body that had just been dried was going to be wet again. The sleepy little polar bear went into the sea. It immediately woke up and followed Ao Daisai's figure closely. In order to shorten the distance between the islands, sometimes they would swim past some reefs. The water was full of seaweed, and it was scary to look down from above. Those black shadows came in wisps. Marine animals were in danger of being entangled by the seaweed, so they had to be especially careful. Of course, Aodicei would not let the seaweed entangle the little bear. He would use his huge body to open up a path in front or avoid some of the more dangerous areas, even if he could shorten the distance. As everyone knew, there were some undercurrents and whirlpools in the sea. If one accidentally got close to these traps, not to mention polar bears, even whales could be in danger. Generally speaking, there were no such dangerous areas in the polar bear's route, and they would also avoid shark-infested areas. All right, I still have to pick a date. If they smelled a strong wind coming, they would not easily enter the sea. However, during this season, the surface of the Arctic Ocean was relatively calm. It was a good time to set out. Therefore, it was not easy to be a polar bear, and it was even more difficult to be a polar bear with cubs. Xiao Qixi, who swam dozens of kilometers in one go, said that it was not easy being a cub. The second leg of the journey was already more than 50 kilometers. He was already tired before he reached the shore. After persevering for a while, the little polar bear had no choice but to let out a cry, attracting the attention of the huge polar bear in front of him. Aodicei, who did not care about Xiao Qixi before, immediately swam back when he heard the sound. He dived under Xiao Qixi's stomach, floated up to the surface, and lifted the little bear. With the help of the buoyancy of the water, Xiao Qixi borrowed some of Aodicei's strength and continued to swim forward. The difference from before was that this time, he could be lazy and take a break every few minutes. This way, it would not be so strenuous. Compared to the first island where they rested, the second island was indeed a little further away. However, there were plants growing on this island, and there were also reefs by the sea. It was a relatively large island. Seeing the reefs, Xiao Qixi was overjoyed. From afar, he began to think about what to eat later. Although he was not full, it would be good to satisfy his cravings. There were indeed no large mammals on the island for them to hunt. Only the seabirds that could be seen at any time could be wrapped around their bellies, if they did not mind. However, seabirds were regarded as the worst food by polar bears. Aodicei might not condescend to catch seabirds. Perhaps he would rather reach his destination hungry. Since he was no longer a free bachelor, even if he was unwilling, he still caught a seabird on the island and gave it to the little polar bear who was eating oysters on the shore. Xiao Qixi looked at the bird and smacked his lips. His eyes were full of suspicion. He wanted to tell Aodicei that he should eat this ugly thing himself. Aodicei cleverly understood Xiao Qixi's meaning. If he did not eat it, then he would let the seabird go, because he did not want to eat it either. He had to pluck the feathers of the seabird to eat it. Otherwise, it would get stuck in his throat. The bird looked quite big, but after plucking the feathers, only a skeleton was left. In fact, there was not much meat left. Aodicei did not like to eat it. It turned out that the seabird had not been bitten to death. Xiao Qixi could not help but admire Aodicei's skills. The seemingly rude Aodicei could be described as bold and meticulous. It was not that he did not want to do meticulous work. Sometimes he might just be lazy. It could not help but make people curious. Which valiant female bear had brought up a cub with such a personality? Was he an only child? According to various signs, Xiao Qixi speculated that Aodicei should not be an only child. At the very least, he had siblings who grew up with him. Only then would Aodicei know that the little bear needed to be taken care of because he could see it. Then, were Aodicei's siblings and mother still living in this area? Were they scattered too? Xiao Qixi was suddenly full of curiosity about these questions. It was a pity that he could not get an accurate answer. Just like how he could not tell Aodicei that he used to be a top student who won a scholarship. Wasn't that awesome? Things like scallops and oysters could not make one feel full, but they could indeed replenish nutrients and speed up the recovery of exhausted energy. While Xiao Qixi was focused on eating snacks, Aodicei, who did not want to waste his energy, ate some seaweed to fill his stomach. He was not even willing to look for seaweed that tasted good. He only ate large pieces of the easy-to-pick species. His eyes glanced at handfuls of seaweed, but he remembered that Xiao Qixi liked to eat this. When Ao Daisai went back, he took a handful with him. After receiving the seaweed, Xiao Qixi happily fed Ao Daisai 2 scallop sticks. It seemed that Ao Daisai liked this thing. Shells were the only shellfish that he could accept. The main reason was that the scallop sticks here were very big and tasted good. They were sweet and juicy and could replenish water. After Ao Daisai finished eating, he licked his mouth and squinted his eyes. He looked like he wanted more. It could be called enjoyment. However, he only tasted it. When Xiao Qixi fed him again, he stopped eating. He just rubbed Xiao Qixi's head intimately and let Xiao Qixi eat by herself. Hashtag where did Ao Daisai and Yulashanda drift to today? Hashtag in the aerial photos, the big polar bear was lazily lying on the reef and sleeping, while the little polar bear stayed in the water and in the crevices of the reef. No one knew what it was doing. H, is it digging for shells? This scene is very similar to a big glutinous rice ball stuck in the crevices of the rocks. Yes, Yulashanda is digging for shells to eat. It is very skilled in this area. At first glance, you can tell that it is a habitual offender. It will even feed Ao Daisai. How enviable. Why is Ao Daisai sleeping? It should be to replenish its energy. Occasionally, it has to carry Yulashanda and swim. It is very tiring. So cute. Poor and lucky 2 little sweethearts. Fortunately, there is a little friend by your side. Even if it is very tiring, you can see a trace of satisfaction. Come on. I don't know where Ao Daisai chose to go to this summer coast. It should not be too far away, right? Xiao Qixi also thought so. It should not be too far away, right? After 2 ocean marathons, he was already afraid. If he continued like this, his fat limbs would become sturdy and muscular. Imagining a polar bear with 8 abdominal muscles, Xiao Qixi quickly shook his head. This was not in line with his aesthetic standards. Ao Daisai allowed the little polar bear to stay in the crevices of the reef for half a day. Then it went down to bite the little bear by the back of its neck and brought it ashore. They wanted to sleep at a place further away from the sea. Just now, it could only be considered a nap on the reef. Ao Daisai chose a dry and high position where they could have a good view of the surrounding environment. Sleeping under the bright sun was a common occurrence. Xiao Qixi had already forgotten what the night felt like. Even everything in the past felt very far away, including the life in the rescue station. It was like a dream. It was as if from the beginning, he had been living on the boundless sea and ice. This meant that Xiao Qixi did not hate his new life. In fact, he quite liked it. In the dream, he and Ao Daisai arrived at a continent suitable for summer. The temperature there was about -10 degrees, and the highest temperature could reach 10 degrees. It was a hot summer. The polar bears around were shouting that it was hot and needed to jump into the sea from time to cool down. Xiao Qixi, is it really that hot? 10 degrees. In his opinion, he still had to wear a cotton-padded jacket. No, he suddenly thought of a problem. In the summer, he was still sleeping next to Ao Daisai. Then, would Ao Daisai be hot? So he curiously asked Ao Daisai, and Ao Daisai told him that it was very hot. 10 degrees was a hot summer for polar bears. Xiao Qixi asked again, then why do you still sleep next to me? Ao Daisai thought for a while and looked at him with a pair of round and deep black eyes. Just as Xiao Qixi was about to get the answer, the sound of a group of seabirds woke him up. The little bear's absurd dream was gone. There was no talking polar bear beside him, only Ao Daisai, who was following its instincts in reality. No, Xiao Qixi felt that Ao Daisai was not following its instincts. At least when it came to raising him, the other party showed a very special personality. Although Xiao Qixi had not been in close contact with other polar bears, he was very sure that Ao Daisai was different. He hugged Ao Daisai's neck intimately and thought of the dream just now. Yes, would Ao Daisai be hot? In the dream, the other party said yes. Then why did they hug each other to sleep? In the dream, Ao Daisai did not answer because he had woken up from the dream. Xiao Qixi decided that the next time he dreamed, he would continue to pester Ao Daisai to ask clearly. After a day, the two polar bears, who had fallen into a deep sleep, had a good sleep on the island. Then they continued their journey to the south. When they were released, they were sent to an island near the east coast of Greenland. When the ice and snow began to melt, they still walked a long way north to chase after the last layer of ice. At that time, the ground was full of ice, and the polar bears did not need to swim back and forth. Now that the ice had melted, they could only swim if they wanted to return to the coast of Greenland, which was still rich in food for summer. Fortunately, there was a transitional island in the middle. The polar bears worked hard and returned to the shore after working hard for a while. Ao Daisai and Xiao Qishi were the same. They swam and stopped. Although it was very difficult, they also saw the dawn of victory. The author has something to say. The opponent is so arrogant. Little Bear played with him. Chapter 301. Fortunately, the other party only stood there quietly for a while and left without much interest. The gap in the wall might be the blind spot of the surveillance camera. The staff did not notice it and left Xiao Qishi with the possibility of being attacked by the other party. Damn, he could not sleep now. In order for him to have a good night's sleep, Xiao Qishi felt that he had to remind the staff about the gap. Therefore, he would wander around the gap after he was full and try to attract the staff's attention. However, Xiao Qishi was walking on the edge of death. Every time he appeared around the gap, he would attract Ao Daisai. In other words, even Ao Daisai was attracted, but the staff did not notice. This was too negligent. Must Ao Daisai crawl to his side and bite him to death with its sharp teeth before the staff noticed that the wall had collapsed? Xiao Qishi imagined how he would die, and his hair stood on end. He was terrified. He believed that Ao Daisai did not come over now because he had not recovered from his injuries and could not climb over the wall. In a few days, Ao Daisai would definitely come over and kill him. As the saying goes, the one who strikes first gains the advantage. Xiao Qishi, who was full, felt that he should take advantage of the fact that Ao Daisai had not recovered and go over to attract the staff's attention. No matter how he thought about it, this plan seemed to be suicide. This morning, the sun was warm. Xiao Qishi leaned against the wall and peeped at Ao Daisai's situation. Half of Ao Daisai's body was exposed outside. He was napping and sunbathing. He seemed to be in a deep sleep. Compared to Xiao Qishi, Ao Daisai's fur was not as white. It was slightly beige. Xiao Qishi thought about it and did not dare to act rashly. Forget it. He would wait and see. Fortunately, after a few days, Ao Daisai was still not interested in killing Xiao Qishi. He did not even chase Xiao Qishi away when Xiao Qishi was peeping on the wall. This was illogical. Over time, even outsiders like Xiao Qishi could tell that Ao Daisai's condition was not optimistic. It seemed that it was not just a physical problem. Sure enough, he overheard a staff member say that Ao Daisai seemed to be unable to adapt to life in the aid station and was a little depressed. Animal psychological diseases were not something inconceivable. Not to mention wild polar bears, even domestic cats and dogs would sometimes fall into a negative state of resistance. If this continued, Ao Daisai might really be sent back to the wild ahead of time. That would be very dangerous. Xiao Qishi held a fish in his mouth and leaned against the wall to peep at his neighbor. His neighbor did not have much energy. Even if he noticed him, he just lay on the snow and lifted his eyelids. Good heavens, is this a strategy? In order to lure him to take the initiative and then bite him to death? This possibility was not ruled out. However, Xiao Qishi felt that polar bears should not have such intelligence. Just as he was considering whether to throw the fish down and leave, Ao Daisai in the distance moved. The other party actually got up and then slowly approached him. Ao Daisai's figure was like a small iceberg. Although he was a little thin now, it did not affect his aura. Xiao Qishi was a little scared, but he could see that although Ao Daisai looked at him with vigilance, he did not see the light of prey. This meant that Ao Daisai did not treat him as prey. Xiao Qishi, who looked calm on the surface but was actually flustered, leaned against the wall and looked at the huge polar bear standing in front of him. He did not flinch. The polar bear's keen senses could judge the opponent's emotions and true intentions. Therefore, he tried his best to restrain his aura, although he did not have any aura to speak of. Ao Daisai was as tall as the young polar bear lying on the wall. He stretched his neck and sniffed the male polar bear cub that appeared in his sight every day. Perhaps he was confused. After all, the polar bear cubs he encountered in the past never dared to wander under his nose. That was an act of seeking death. Xiao Qishi held the fish in her mouth and did not move, allowing the polar bear's round and deep eyes to look at her. Speaking of which, the polar bear's eyes were very beautiful, big and round. After sniffing the little bear for a moment, Ao Daisai withdrew his curiosity and licked his mouth. His slow movements and dim eyes clearly made Xiao Qishi feel that he was unhappy. Xiao Qishi felt a little distressed. How should he put it? A 4-year-old polar bear should not have such eyes. He hoped that this polar bear would recuperate at the rescue station and then return to the wild to continue to live. The injured Ao Daisai rarely walked outside. After being attracted by Xiao Qishi to walk around, he returned to his original place and continued to lie down and sleep in the sun. The polar bear's body was full of resistance to his current life. The fish that was still alive swayed its tail in Xiao Qishi's mouth. Xiao Qishi seemed to have decided on something. His 2 hind legs kicked up, and suddenly, with a loud bang, the broken wall under him fell down. F***CK. After all, no matter how young he was still a polar bear and weighed at least a few hundred kilograms. The big movement here attracted Ao Daisai's attention again. He lazily looked at the scene of the accident quietly. Xiao Qishi shook his thick fur and walked towards Ao Daisai with the fish in his mouth. At this time, his figure finally appeared in the surveillance video. The staff member who saw him rubbed his eyes, thinking that he had seen wrongly. Oh my God! Oh no! Yulashanda appeared in Ao Daisai's residence. He quickly informed his colleagues. Think of a way, we can't let them fight. What? How'd he get there? The staff member who came over to watch the surveillance video was shocked. What is our little angel Yulashanda doing? Oh my God, he has a fish in his mouth? That's right. The people around him found it unbelievable. Is he trying to get on Ao Daisai's good side? It was very surprising for something like this to happen to a polar bear, but it didn't seem to be completely impossible. Wait, let's observe Ao Daisai's reaction first. If he doesn't attack Yulashanda, it might be good for his emotional stability. A staff member said his thoughts with a serious expression. But they also knew that this was very dangerous. If Ao Daisai attacked Yulashanda, the outcome would be very bad. As Xiao Qishi got closer and closer to Ao Daisai, the staff members in front of the surveillance video started to breathe rapidly. They were very nervous. Let's wait a little longer. Maybe there will be a different outcome. Xiao Qishi was also very nervous, but humans couldn't see his nervousness with the naked eye. His thick fur allowed him to make a charmingly naive expression. People only saw him walk slowly to Ao Daisai and put the fish in front of him in a friendly manner. It was really unbelievable for a young polar bear to do such a thing. Could it be that Yulashanda treated Ao Daisai as his mother? This seemed to be the only explanation. Ao Daisai, who didn't have much energy, might be as confused as humans. It was obvious that this was the first time he was fed by a young polar bear. In their genes, only mothers would feed their children, and during mating, some male polar bears would give their food to the female. If it was a normal day, Ao Daisai would definitely be very enthusiastic about food. This was because he had to survive in the wild, and he needed to eat anytime and anywhere to ensure his survival. But here, his mood fell to the bottom, and at the same time, he more or less lost his enthusiasm for food. However, the appearance of a little bear awakened his instinctive desire for survival. After all, other than the snow on the ground, this was the only familiar memory of Ao Daisai. It was a fellow polar bear. The staff members saw from the surveillance video that Ao Daisai lowered his head and picked up the fish. He placed it between his 2 paws, put his paws on it, and then tilted his head to bite it. There was a round of applause in the surveillance room, and everyone was relieved. Xiao Qishi was very happy. This dispirited polar bear had better eat more. After all, he had to eat enough to heal his injuries. A single fish was not even enough to fill the gaps between the polar bear's teeth. In just a minute, Otis had swallowed the fish that Xiao Qishi had brought. He licked the blood on his paws, and at the same time, there seemed to be some light in his eyes as he watched Xiao Qishi. Seeing that he seemed to be about to get up, Xiao Qishi took a few steps back. "Hey, brother, what do you want to do?" he thought to himself. Later, he simply ran towards the collapsed gap. He was so agile that he did not look like a bear. Ao Daisai looked at the back of the little polar bear and did not chase after it. After a while, he turned his head to the corner where the food was placed and ate all the fish in the trough. This change made the staff happy, and they began to discuss whether to rebuild the collapsed gap. After repeated discussions, they felt that leaving the gap open might be good for Ao Daisai and Yulashanda. They might be able to become playmates to comfort each other. At this point, Xiao Qishi's plan was declared a failure. His original plan was to walk around to attract the attention of the staff, and then let the staff fill the gap for him. As a result, not only did the gap become bigger, but he also made the best use of it and became a tool bear, becoming Ao Daisai's playmate. Are humans serious? There was no such record in the history of polar bears. How could two adult male polar bears who were not related by blood become playmates? However, no matter how angry Xiao Qishi was, his residence and Ao Daisai's residence were still connected. This was an unchangeable fact. The author has something to say, working together to earn health products. Chapter 302. Polar bears were not used to hiding their leftover prey. Usually, after a full meal, they would leave. The smell of blood was too easy to attract other polar bears. If they were targeted, it would be a fierce battle. Fighting was not cost-effective, so polar bears that were full would choose to abandon their prey and leave. They loved cleanliness and would clean up the food debris on their bodies to avoid leaving a strong smell that could easily expose their whereabouts. Whether a polar bear was doing well could usually be judged from its appearance. If the appearance was very clean and the lines were smooth, it meant that it was doing well. If one's body was dirty and looked sloppy, it meant that they were not doing well. Although Ao Daisai was not as good as Xiao Qishi's 90% new, it was still 80% new, and its fur was still quite white. Ao Daisai, who was calm and collected, succeeded in its first hunt after coming back. It was a 100-pound ringed seal, which it could not finish in one meal. Guarding the remaining half of the food, Ao Daisai licked its mouth and raised its head. Its expression looked like a polar bear's confusion, and its eyes searched the ice. Perhaps it was vigilant of its surroundings in case a strange polar bear approached, or maybe it was looking for something. Nearly 2 months of life at the rescue station had left some impressions on this polar bear, but as time passed, it would forget those 2 short months. In terms of intelligence, polar bears were not low, otherwise they would not have been able to become the king of the ice. However, polar bears' intelligence was only reflected in survival skills. Other than information related to survival, they were not sensitive to other aspects of information. They had already stopped evolving. They only had limited intelligence, but no intelligence was reflected. Scientists believed that polar bears rarely made any innovative moves other than their instinctive reactions. Xiao Qishi did not know much about polar bears, and he did not know that the rescue station was closely monitoring his movements. Compared to the movements of other polar bears, Xiao Qishi's data was a bit strange. After all, polar bears did not live a regular life. They wandered back and forth in the cave every day and liked to sleep in the same place. Because Xiao Qishi needed a sense of security, staying in a familiar place was one of the ways he gained a sense of security. He treated this area as his own territory. However, if they stayed here for a long time, they would leave behind a strong smell. Over time, no marine animals would come to the Xiao Qishi's breathing hole. Therefore, Xiao Qishi's plan to just eat and wait for death had failed. Xiao Qishi still had to expand its hunting territory. The food in the wild was not as concentrated as the food in the rescue station. Since returning to nature, Xiao Qishi had not had a full meal. He was always in a half-starved state. If he didn't work hard, he would experience what it felt like to be hungry. He felt a sense of crisis. If only there was a fishing net. Xiao Qishi occasionally thought about it. But even if there was a fishing net, there were no hands to catch fish. Therefore, he only thought about it unrestrainedly. Polar bears had lived for a long time, and they would occasionally forget that they were once human. In short, everything was very magical, and people could not tell if the past was reality or the present. Who knows? Occasionally, Xiao Qishi would encounter seals basking in the sun on the ice. For example, right now, its first reaction was that seals were so cute. Then it would think, I wonder what they taste like. Xiao Qishi was surprised and then delighted. Very good. This change was very good. It felt that it would not be long before it became an emotionless seal killer. The seal nearby also noticed Xiao Qishi's existence. Then the seal turned over and continued to bask in the sun. This was its greatest respect for the little polar bear. Damn, this seal was not bad. It was arrogant. Xiao Qishi, who was despised, gritted his teeth and thought, I will eat you sooner or later. A week had passed since he made this oath. Xiao Qishi's half-starved state consumed a lot of fat every day. However, he still looked white and clean. He did not look like a polar bear with a bleak future. Perhaps it was because he had the soul of an adult, but he always felt that life and death did not need to be stubborn, but must be elegant. In May, the wind on the ice in the coastal areas of the Arctic Ocean became gentle. As the saying goes, the wind changed direction. The north wind of spring passed, and the east wind blew in the polar circle. The east wind also blew more throughout the summer. When Ao Daisai was about to forget that a little polar bear named Yulashanda had once appeared in his life, a gust of east wind changed direction and brought him a familiar smell. At this time, Ao Daisai was eating. If there was a time when Ao Daisai would remember Xiao Qishi the most, it would be when he was eating. It had been half a month since he returned to nature. He thought less and less about his life at the rescue station. There was only one little polar bear left in his memory. Even the little polar bear was thinking less and less about it. After all, it was a polar bear. Their memory would not store such insignificant things. Perhaps many years later, when they met by chance and smelled the familiar smell, they would immediately think of each other. However, in the long years of separation, they would not think of each other. Ao Daisai, who was eating, smelled a trace of smell brought by the wind. He raised his head in confusion and used his nose to search the air. Unfortunately, after more than 100 kilometers of evacuation, the smell was very, very little. Even the polar bear, with an amazing sense of smell, could not get any useful information from this little bit of smell. Ao Daisai was in a daze for a while. Of course, it could also be that he was thinking seriously. It could only be said that his expression was too misleading. On the human internet, netizens once asked this question: does the polar bear, the overlord of the polar region, know that it is so cute? It must not know. The cute-looking polar bear was a genuine super beast. They would even take the initiative to attack humans, drones, mobile cameras, and so on. In short, their indiscriminate destructive power was amazing. Ao Daisai caught a trace of the little polar bear's smell in the wind, then continued to eat as if nothing had happened. Ao Daisai left the territory that he had occupied for half a month. Look, it's heading towards Yulashanda's habitat. Seeing Ao Daisai's movement through the GPS locator, the staff was surprised. Was this a coincidence or intentional? Because it was too incredible, people had to guess. Yulashanda had not migrated long distances. If this continued, Ao Daisai would be able to find it in less than a week. How should they put it? This kind of meeting was a little exciting. But could two wild male polar bears really travel together? While looking forward to it, people could not help but be worried. On the road, Ao Daisai, except for stopping to hunt, spent the rest of the time moving on the ice. According to its speed, it could travel about 25 kilometers a day and float no more than 5 kilometers. It often stopped to sniff to determine the direction, but it was also often confused because not every wind had the smell of the little polar bear. As long as the position was slightly off, it would still eventually miss the little polar bear. Polar bears with life experience were always very sensitive to the direction of the wind. They combined all the data around them to determine the direction they were going. Ao Daisai was less than 5 years old, and it had only lived alone for 2 years. It may not have a lot of life experience, but it was very smart and cautious. It stood to reason that when the hard summer came, it should seize the time to store enough fat for itself, instead of wasting time looking for a little polar bear. Was it really looking for Yolashanda? 2 days later, when Ao Daisai was getting closer and closer to Yolashanda's area of activity, people finally confirmed that Ao Daisai was indeed looking for Yolashanda. When the distance between the two sides was reduced to 60 kilometers, everything would become simpler. At this time, a new situation occurred. An adult male polar bear broke into Qiao Qishi's area of activity. Within 60 kilometers was not a safe distance. When a male polar bear smelled the scent of a little polar bear, it may deliberately track and hunt. This was all possible. Qiao Qishi, who was making a living in his own territory, did not know that he was facing an unoptimistic survival crisis. He was planning when to muster up the courage to attack the cute little seal. Of course, Qiao Qishi had the sensory system of a polar bear. When the unfamiliar scent of a polar bear appeared within 10 kilometers, he finally felt the danger approaching. Very good. The food crisis had not been solved, but a new challenge had come. Of course, Qiao Qishi would not use his little bear body to challenge an adult polar bear that smelled very ferocious. It was not good to stay in a dangerous place for long. Without hesitation, he abandoned the country he had built and fled. Polar bears could run 60 kilometers in an hour at full speed. Of course, this only applied to adult polar bears. A rookie like Qiao Qishi would be tired after running for 5 kilometers in a row, not to mention that he was hungry. It was like turning on the death mode. Ao Daisai kept moving on the ice for 5 days. The smell of more and more polar bears filled the air, indicating that it was not looking in the wrong direction. However, in the area where the polar bear was active, the smell of another adult polar bear made it hesitate. Polar bears had no natural enemies. The natural enemy of a polar bear was another powerful polar bear. Ao Daisai's instinct made it want to leave this place. This had nothing to do with whether it was strong or not. It just did not want to meet another adult polar bear. Joe, day after day, you only know how to play disgusted. Chapter 303. The parrot's claws were not as good as human fingers, so Yolashanda had to take a screenshot for a long time. Finally, he took a screenshot and sent it over with Black Singlet's WeChat. Then, he typed in what he wanted to say. Hello, officer. This uncle is very likely to be the suspect. Please analyze it as soon as possible. Parrots were good at repeating words. Yolashanda's tone was exactly the same as Black Singlet's. Suddenly, the police officer over there mistakenly thought that he was Black Singlet. How did you know? How do you know that he is the suspect? They had also seen the surveillance video. Hundreds of people were dazzled by it. It was too difficult to find a suspect. The parrot said so. It's better to believe it than not. Officer, you should check it out quickly. Even if there was not enough evidence, as long as there was a suspect, they would quickly check it out. The police officer immediately pulled up all the videos of the uncle and sent them to the technical department for analysis. Soon, the two parties arrived at the library. At this time, the crowd had been evacuated. The police had set up a cordon here, and no one was allowed to come close. The bomb search team had already entered with the bomb search dogs and was conducting a comprehensive search. Black Singlet put on his temporary work permit and was allowed to enter. He ran too slowly. Yolashanda and Ao Daisai could not wait any longer. They immediately flew out of his hands and aimed at the surroundings of the bathroom. The arrival of the two parrots temporarily attracted the attention of the bomb search dogs. However, they were well-behaved babies who had undergone strict training. They would never catch the birds at this time. The bomb search team had the same idea. They immediately went to the blind spots of the surveillance video, but found nothing. Let's split up. Time passed by. In order to improve efficiency, Yelashanda and Ao Daisai acted separately and reported to each other at any time. They had already searched all the bathrooms on this floor and found nothing. However, there were surveillance cameras everywhere except here. They could be sure that the man left directly after coming out of the bathroom. Unless they had the wrong suspect, or this was a gang crime, the police officer kept reminding them. As time passed, Yelashanda and Ao Daisai became anxious. However, they really could not hear the bomb. Either there was no bomb here, or the bomb was very far away from them. How is it? Did you find anything? There were only 10 minutes left. The man in the black singlet couldn't help but wipe his sweat. If he couldn't find them in 5 minutes, he would have to retreat. But this meant another failure. The two parrots ignored him. Yelashanda was discussing with Ao Daisai. Do you think we might have made a mistake? At this time, it would be too late to attack other places. No, it must be here, Ao Daisai said calmly. He flew around the washroom again, trying to get some clues. Every toilet had been thoroughly checked by the police officers. Even the sewers and the toilets were not spared. Wait, a manhole? Yelashanda's pupils dilated as if he had a flash of inspiration. Ao Daisai, quick, quick, let's go under the drain and check. The floor drains in several toilet cubicles had been opened by the police officers one by one, but they checked and found nothing. No, it was just that the drain was not deep enough. No wonder he and Ao Daisai couldn't sense the bomb. It was indeed because it was too far away. The police officers were a little scared when they saw the two parrots rushing down. Fortunately, they were not slow and immediately looked for tools to reinforce them. Get a rope. There were only a few minutes left. They used every minute and every second, not daring to delay. There were a total of 6 toilets here, and they had the chance to choose 2 out of 6. Yelashanda kept flying down, and he wanted to turn back. What if he chose the wrong one? If the bomb was unfortunately installed in another toilet, he and Ao Daisai would be finished. So he immediately reminded Ao Daisai, if you feel that something is wrong, go back. Don't rush blindly to the end. For example, right now, Yelashanda should go back, or it would be too late to evacuate. Ao Daisai, why didn't this guy say anything? Of course, Ao Daisai didn't say anything, because he was listening attentively. He wasn't stupid. If he didn't find anything, he wouldn't continue to rush down. However, he ignored one point. If he didn't say anything, Yelashanda would be very worried, and then he would call for help. Ao Daisai, really, the police officers had microphones, but this guy actually turned them off. After a few seconds of terrible silence, Ao Daisai made a soft hiss. He seemed to be very sure that he heard something, so he told Little Bear, go back. Yelashanda immediately turned over and went back. He felt that the rope was being held in his mouth, so he immediately pulled it up. Ao Daisai, who had dived into the depths of the drain, finally grabbed a package stuck in the water pipe. He broke the airbag with his claws so that the package could rise freely. The people on the ground pulled Ao Daisai up and found the package in his claws. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief, but immediately tensed up. Defuse the bomb. There were only 5 minutes left. A few elite bomb disposal experts rushed over with tools, and the rest of the people immediately evacuated. After that, Yelashanda and Ao Daisai were not at the scene. They only knew that the bomb exploded in the end, but no one was injured. How did it explode? This result made everyone feel that their efforts were in vain. Just now, they had risked their lives. If any part of the process was not coordinated well, there would be 2 less handsome and smart parrots in the world. On the way back to the police station, the car was very quiet. No one spoke, and no one knew whether it was because they were tired or because they were in a bad mood. Yelashanda opened his wings and sniffed. The smell almost made him lose his balance and fall. Fortunately, Ao Daisai's eyes and claws were quick, and he caught the little cutie. "What's wrong? Are you hurt?" He quickly checked up and down. "Don't come near me, stinky." Yolashanda quickly held his breath and stayed away from Ao Daisai. Anyone who smelled the sewer would know the smell. Ao Daisai thought that he did not dislike Yolashanda. When they arrived at the police station, the two parrots quickly flew to the bathroom, turned on the tap, and soaked themselves inside and out. A kind and beautiful policewoman gently and carefully dried them with a hairdryer. She seemed to find that they were a little depressed and thought that they were hungry and tired, so she carefully prepared food and drinks for them. The two of them were the heroes of this search. The officer came out to look for them again and again. When he saw them eating, he did not dare to disturb them. He waited for them to finish eating before bringing them into the conference room. As soon as Yolashanda entered the conference room, he saw the bomb on the table. It looked exactly the same as the one they brought out from the floor drain. Wait, if this was the bomb, then the one that exploded in the library was the second one? Ao Daisai reacted quickly and guessed the truth. They changed the bomb to confuse the enemy. Yes, the police did this to buy time for themselves. On the one hand, they let the enemy think that they were still helpless. On the other hand, they studied the new bomb. From now on, do your best to track down the whereabouts of this person. Be sure to find him in the shortest time possible. The police officer pointed at the sweatshirt uncle on the projection with a baton and assigned the next work one by one. Yolashanda looked at him and scratched Ao Daisai's feathers. "Oh my, this is at least a police supervisor. His position is so high." When they were police dogs, they did not often see police supervisors. When they were whispering, the police officer suddenly mentioned the two parrots. Yolashanda immediately stood at attention. This was the after effect of being a soldier, and he would never forget it. The police officer praised them and then assigned them a task, which was to help the police find the whereabouts of the criminal. They were brought in front of the bomb and sniffed it without touching it. Yolashanda sighed to Ao Daisai. "Sigh, we're not dogs anymore, but we're still doing the work of dogs." There was nothing wrong with Yolashanda, but he liked to talk nonsense when he was working. Ao Daisai was used to it. He said, "Do you smell fish?" Yolashanda immediately took a deep breath, but he regretted it halfway. Cough, cough, cough. His nose was full of the smell of the sewer. Ao Daisai looked at him with a bit of affection. After calming down, Yolashanda did not dare to sniff hard anymore. He sniffed carefully and did distinguish a little bit of the smell of fish. But what could this mean? Maybe this person had eaten fish. Ao Daisai blinked. They were very familiar with fish, and the smell of this kind of fish was also very familiar. It seemed to be a striped trevally. In fact, the fishy smell attached to the bomb was very faint and almost undetectable. Otherwise, Yolashanda could immediately identify the species of this fish, because he also liked to eat this kind of fish. Striped trevally was a rare and precious fish. It was usually used as sashimi, but not every high-end Japanese restaurant would have it on hand. When Ao Daisai mentioned this kind of fish, Yolashanda suddenly understood and then began to salivate. So it was this kind of fish. He had not eaten it for a long time. Could they eat striped trevally in this city? Slurp, that's great. Yolashanda felt that he had found the answer to his hard work. Maybe it was for striped trevally, plus beer and micronutrient tablets. They handed this information to the police. Although it was unbelievable, the police already trusted them unconditionally through their previous performance. The officer immediately ordered a secret search of all the Japanese restaurants in the city tonight. Anyone who sold striped trevally was to check the surveillance cameras. At this time, it was already time to get off work. Yolashanda and the others could go back first, but the police officers all stayed behind to work overtime. On the car home, Yolashanda said happily, "Oh, fortunately, we are no longer parrots in the system. Otherwise, we would also have to stay behind to work overtime. If we work overtime, we won't be able to go to the disco." Black Singlet Brother. Who said we were going to the disco? Previously, when he said that he was going to the disco, he was attacked by the parrot. Why do you want to go now? You said it. You want to go back on your word? Yolashanda immediately flew forward and used his claws to grab the Black Singlet's buzz cut. I don't care. We are going to the disco. Let go, let go. We have a mission tomorrow. We can't drink. The black singlet pushed away the parrot's claws. It's okay. My boyfriend sobers up quickly. Yolashanda was reluctant to give up. He made a fuss, and Ao Daisai reaped the benefits. The author has something to say. Not only do I want to go to the disco, but I also want to eat top-grade striped trevally. Chapter 304. The officer had just told him not to reveal the existence of the two parrots, so the man in the black singlet would not dare to take them to the disco. Did the parrots want to make the headlines? What if the whole city knew about it tomorrow morning? Even if they did not make the headlines, they would be on WeChat Moments. Who would be responsible if something happened? Yolashanda smacked his lips. Then we won't go to the disco. You can buy some beer and barbecue skewers and have a midnight snack, right? His claws were already pointing at the man in the black singlet, as if he was threatening him. After Yolashanda's bargaining, they got a midnight snack. Since it was not fun to drink beer at home, they asked the man in the black singlet to play some high music. The man and the two parrots had a lot of fun. But after only half an hour, there was a very loud knock on the door. The man in the black singlet was shocked and quickly turned off the music to open the door. The neighbor must have come to complain. Damn, he forgot such an important thing. Outside the door was indeed the neighbor's aunt who had complained. She knew that a group of Japanese people were having a party next door. She had to go and teach them a lesson. Then the other party opened the door, and the aunt angrily poked her head in, only to find that there was no one in the room. There were two parrots standing obediently on the shelf. The aunt had to catch the man in the black singlet and scold him. The man in the black singlet kept nodding and bowing to apologize. I'm sorry. The aunt was probably very confused when she left. Why did she have to dance at home alone? Was it fun? How strange. Black singlet, who had been scolded, came back and snorted heavily at the two parrots. You can see the look in his eyes yourself. Looking up at the clock, it was still early. The police were probably secretly investigating the Japanese restaurants in the city. Yes, after intensive investigation, they had locked onto one. Their manager said that he had indeed seen the suspect. It was basically confirmed that this person was the one they were looking for. Fortunately, in today's society, there were cameras everywhere. Soon, the police took the person's usual footprints, analyzed them, and then locked onto the area where the person might live. At this time, the gangster called again. The other party said that he was very sorry that they had wasted the fifth chance again. Ha ha! The processed voice sounded sharp and strange. After the other party ridiculed them to their heart's content, he left the time period, but this time he did not tell them the location. The police officer was not in a hurry. He hung up the phone and methodically arranged the work. The experts had thoroughly studied the new type of bomb that they had obtained before. So this was what it was all about. Based on its principle, a device to search for this kind of bomb was quickly created. At the same time, he kept a close eye on the surveillance camera. Once the suspect appeared on the surveillance camera, he would immediately follow him. The next morning, the suspect appeared on a surveillance camera in a residential area. The police quickly confirmed his identity and continued to follow him. Investigate all his call records. We must know how he contacted the real culprit. The police officers still believed that this was a crime committed by a gang, and the real suspect behind it had yet to surface. During this period, they kept a close eye on the first suspect, who was the executioner. The other party had not received any suspicious calls. It seemed that the communication between them did not rely on the phone. When the time arrived, the first suspect made his move. This time, he chose a park. When the other party made his move, the police immediately took him down and brought him back to the police station for interrogation. On the other side, the suspect's home had been turned upside down by the police. They found a lot of semi-finished bombs. After interrogation, the suspect also confessed that he had assembled them himself. As for the raw materials, they were given by someone else. The other party had paid him to do so. According to the contact information and account information, the police further identified the identity of this person and could start to close the net. First, let the first suspect cooperate with the police to play a show, first stabilize the other side, and at the same time launch a swift cross-border pursuit. The two parrots had a very outstanding ability to find people. They both gloriously became members of the cross-border pursuit. The black vest participated as a poop picker. The place where the gangster was hiding was a small country in Asia. After the local police read the relevant judicial documents, they said that they would assist in the arrest. However, their assistance was too hasty. The China police had not arrived at the scene yet, and they had already alerted the gangster. The police dogs brought from China, smelling the scent, rushed to chase the gangster. Obviously, the gangster had fled to the wild. Yulashanda and Ao Daisai flew to the front. They were very fast and could catch up with the gangster in minutes, but they could not stop the gangster. A few minutes later, the two parrots, who had been waiting for the gangster in front, eagerly watched the gangster run under the tree again. Yulashanda looked at his claws and imagined tripping the gangster with his claws. He suddenly shuddered and quickly took back his claws. "Have you thought of a way?" he asked Ao Daisai. Ao Daisai shook his head. Without sharp fangs and a huge body, he could not do anything. However, it was possible to slow down the gangster and make him go around in circles. 10 seconds later, there was a voice in front of the gangster. "I'm a China police officer. Don't move, put down your weapon and surrender, or..." They understood that, but the black singlet pulled a boat full of supplies, which were all swept from the supermarket. On a sunny day, he sent the two parrots back to the Amazon jungle. The two macaws, standing at the bow of the boat, looked like they had returned home in glory. The black singlet found a suitable place to put down the supplies and covered them with a tarpaulin. "Okay, I will send more to you after you finish eating." "Yulashanda, thank you." He took it seriously. A boat full of supplies was not good enough. After all, there were so many parrots in the jungle. When they were eating snacks, they were surrounded by a circle of parrots. They were too embarrassed to eat alone. A few days later, Yulashanda found that the tomato-flavored chips had run out. He and Ao Daisai both loved tomato-flavored chips. "It's gone so soon?" Ao Daisai did not believe it. He stood in the pile of snacks and rummaged with his paw. "Didn't we take a lot?" Yulashanda, "Obviously not enough." Ao Daisai agreed. But Yulashanda was very open-minded. "Eating too much junk food will shorten your life. Chips are the junk food of junk food. Don't eat them. Here is another pack." Ao Daisai finally saw the familiar packaging. He picked it up with his paw and tilted his head. "You don't want to eat? Then I'll eat it myself." Yulashanda was stunned. Forget it. He could not take back what he had said. "I want to eat." The two parrots huddled together and happily shared the potato chips. One for each of them. One for each of them. Since this was the last pack of tomato-flavored chips, Yulashanda got into the bag after eating it and even licked the crumbs clean. 2 months later, there were only trace element chips and a little beer left in the pile of supplies. Yulashanda and Ao Daisai both hoped that the man in the black vest would keep his promise and send them more after eating. But they waited and waited and waited anxiously, but the man in the black vest still did not come. Damn it, they were cheated. After waiting for another 2 months, the parrots grew up one by one. The man in the black vest, who had made a solemn vow at the Amazon, never came to fulfill his promise. Yulashanda raised a paw and supported himself on the tree trunk. He looked up at the sky at a 45-degree angle, a little greedy. In fact, it was not that the man in the black vest forgot his promise. He just thought that it was not good for parrots to eat too many snacks. It was enough to eat them once a year. Therefore, Yulashanda was afraid that he would have to wait until this day, next year, to eat snacks. Unless there were other humans who remembered them and invited them to work in the mountains. The two of them only knew a few people in total. Besides the man in the black vest, there was only the group of soldiers in the Foreign Legion. Yulashanda, if only I could contact them and ask them where they are making money now. The author has something to say. Society parrots. For example, after the violent winds and torrential rain, one could see a colorful and blue figure bustling about. It was so respectable and adorable. The kindness emanating from the bottom of their hearts would always be reciprocated. The parrots nearby, who were familiar with them, were full of goodwill towards them. Over time, Yelashanda and Aodicei could fly to any species group and stay there. They were very popular. There was nothing to be busy on a day when there was no rain or wind. Yelashanda was lying on a tree branch in front of his house. He used his claws to lift the branch and did his physical training. It could be seen that he was very focused on maintaining his strength. Well, to put it bluntly, he had a restless heart. This stick is too light. Aodicei, give me another one. Yelashanda, who was lying on his back, ordered Aodicei, who was training beside him. Aodicei nodded and hurriedly flew to the ground to pick up a branch for Yelashanda. He added it to his claws. 1, 2, 1, 2. The heavy stick was lifted up and down by Yelashanda. Not long after, his thigh muscles were a little tired. After about 20 minutes of training, Yelashanda put down the stick tiredly and got up to shake his feathers. I feel so refreshed. Aodicei, it's your turn. They would take turns to train with each other every time. Weightlifting was quite fun, but Aodicei did not like the stick that Yelashanda used before. He wanted to find himself a big piece of wood. This was more interesting. Yelashanda looked at the heavy and solid piece of wood and did not know what to say. When they first became parrots, their thigh muscles were the same, but they were definitely different now. Aodicei was patient and was not afraid of fatigue. His thigh muscles were very strong, and Yelashanda could feel it very clearly. This solid and heavy piece of wood was lifted up by Aodicei for more than half an hour. Seeing that Aodicei did not need him to serve him, Yelashanda stood on the branch beside him to train the strength of his wings. He lifted it up high above his head and pressed it down. He did it 10 times to the left and 10 times to the right. Aodicei did not look tired at all after he finished his training. He shook his feathers and came over to Yelashanda to play kickboxing with him. His careful attitude seemed to indicate that he was afraid that Yelashanda would not agree. Yelashanda calmly lifted his leg and thought to himself, "You just finished half an hour of training with equipment. Let's see if I can't beat you this time." Okay. Yelashanda and Aodicei came to the kickboxing field. It was a grassy field, and there were not many things around. They politely bowed to each other, and Yelashanda charged at him. Although he looked very cute, it was undeniable that his moves were very fast and very lethal. Even the powerful Aodicei did not dare to underestimate Yelashanda's fighting ability. The first night on the ship was safe and sound. The horizon was about to bloom with golden light. Yelashanda and Aodicei flew to the mast outside, enjoying the long-awaited sea breeze and waiting for the breathtaking sunrise. "Let's go!" Yelashanda, who was in Aodicei's arms, shouted happily. This was not the first time he and Aodicei had set off, and it would not be the last. Not long after, the brilliant golden light covered the entire sea. The big white ship carried the two of them to the depths of the sea that they were familiar with. The people in the cabin noticed that the sun had come out, and they all came to the deck to enjoy the beautiful scenery. Some of them were chatting and laughing with their friends, and some were hugging their partners. Perhaps this was the power of nature, which could always deeply touch people's inner feelings. Yelashanda and Aodicei were also a happy couple. They were in a corner that no one knew about, and they were managing their small, plain, but great love. The wind is a little strong today. Do you think I will be blown away by the wind if I spread my wings? Yelashanda turned her head and asked. You will, Aodicei said dotingly. But don't worry, I won't let you be blown away by the wind. His strength was always prepared for the adorable Yelashanda. The author has something to say. Every time a ship sets off, it is for its return. After the parrot chapter, the next chapter is the leopard. Not the leopard and the seal, but to be honest, that you're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.